This place was supposed to be an ordinary reformatory, yet it is called hell by all the juvenile delinquents in the country. No matter whether you were once a campus gang boss who ruled your turf, or a privileged child of the powerful with connections reaching the heavens, once you are sent here, you have only one identity, a beast completely stripped of the qualification to be human. From morning till night every day, there is non-stop high-intensity corporal punishment training. You are not allowed to speak human language, not allowed to eat human food. You can only squeal like a pig and eat like a pig. They will paint different letter marks on your chest, according to the type and severity of each person's crime. The higher the letter grade, the greater the intensity of correction required. And the so-called reform period lasts until they confirm that you have completely thrown away your self-respect and become like an animal whose soul has been hollowed out. Just like that teenage crime syndicate leader Jo Chang-soo, who once made even the police tremble. Only after he was tortured until he could no longer control his bowels and became mentally disabled was he considered truly reformed. All of this stems from the existence of the Juvenile Protection Act. Under the shelter of that law, South Korea's juvenile crime rate began to skyrocket out of control. Teachers ceased to be lighthouses guiding them back onto the right path, and instead became punching bags for their fists and feet. Even if they seriously injured someone or even killed, they would not feel the slightest bit of guilt, because they had long since understood, so long as the Juvenile Protection Act existed, they would never receive the punishment they deserved no matter what they did. Thus in this era, there were no longer any adults who dared to stand up and correct children's mistakes. They feared retaliation, feared being targeted, and became cautious and timid in front of children, no longer daring to take on the role of adults. Until Han Mansu was elected president. He announced the abolition of the Juvenile Protection Act, and at the same time issued a brand new decree called Reformation. Re-education once again became the new punishment faced by juvenile offenders. Once they broke the law, they would be sent to a Reformation reformatory to undergo centralized corrective training. Only when they were deemed to have completely reformed could they return to society again with the status of a human being. Stripped down, it comes to only one sentence: when words no longer work, the only road left is centralized discipline. The scene shifts, and a strange sight appears at Sanangrak High School. The group of usually arrogant delinquents are actually lining up of their own accord on the playground to donate blood. The adults watching think that they have finally started to grow up and learned how to give. But in reality, they have only one true goal: to get that blood donation certificate. Because one blood donation certificate can be exchanged for 5,000 won with the protagonist, Lee Min-soo. So the very first thing they do after donating blood is line up to find Lee Min-soo to trade for cash. And this is Lee Min-soo's current business. He spends 10,000 won to buy a 5,000 won gift card plus a blood donation certificate. His real target is not the gift card at all, but these blood donation certificates piling up, because the hidden value of a single blood donation certificate is about 12,000 won. This is how he profits, as a middleman earning the difference. He knows full well that this already counts as a criminal act, but he is not afraid in the least. Because at his age, the worst possible outcome is just a warning letter. The real danger instead comes from the gaze of other delinquents. Lee Min-soo, who had been lowering his head and counting money, the very next second is kicked in the face by a flying foot, and both he and the cardboard box are sent flying several meters. A few delinquents come over and surround him, looking down at him from above. "Looks like you've been making quite a bit lately, huh?" Staring at them, Lee Min-soo curses under his breath, "Damn it." The thing he feared most has still happened. His illegal profit has made him prey in the eyes of other criminals. In their eyes, this means he can forget about getting any benefit at all. These delinquents surrounding him couldn't care less about the newly issued decree. In their eyes, so-called reformation is nothing but a pile of rubbish. The bleach blonde ringleader blows foul yellow smoke at him, then swaggers over and sits down on his crotch, humiliating him in this way. Leaning down, the blonde asks him how he could make money and not know how to share, then mocks, "Is it because Jo Chang-soo went into the reformatory that you dare to act this cocky?" Before the words have even faded, he spits a thick glob of phlegm straight onto Lee Min-soo's face. Pinned underfoot, Lee Min-soo trembles with rage all over and grits his teeth, cursing, "If it weren't for Jo Chang-soo, you'd be nothing but trash." The blonde doesn't deny it. Of course he knows how terrifying Jo Chang-soo is, and even admits that the guy is 100 times scarier than he is. But this monster just happens to be getting out of the reformatory today. At those words, Lee Min-soo's pupils suddenly shrink. Jo Chang-soo is the leader of the juvenile crime gang in this area. Anyone targeted by him has invariably broken down under hellish torment. Yet not a single person dares to step forward and call themselves a victim, because they all fear the retaliation of a demon. Lee Min-soo is no exception. Just seeing that ferocious, fiend-like face is enough to make him shake all over. Seeing Lee Min-soo stunned with fright, the blonde smirks maliciously. "If you don't want to get on Jo Chang-soo's bad side, then hand over the money nicely." As he rummages in his backpack, Lee Min-soo says no problem out loud. But in the next second, he flips them the middle finger. The blonde is instantly set off and starts cursing that he's a son of a bitch, then drives a vicious kick into his abdomen, followed by a flurry of punches and kicks, pressing him down onto the ground. Just because Jo Chang-soo isn't here, you really think no one can deal with you? The more he beats him, the less his anger subsides. Out of the corner of his eye he spots a shovel standing to the side. Today, he plans to give Lee Min-soo a lesson he will never forget. One of the delinquents beside him quietly urges him to calm down. If you keep beating him like this and something happens, you'll be sent to the reformatory. But the blonde doesn't care at all. The reformatory? I'm not scared. As long as I'm tough enough, I can walk out anytime I want. Right now, I just want to beat him until he pisses himself on the spot. Just as he is about to swing the shovel, he suddenly takes a heavy kick from behind. The one who kicked him, the student council president, Kang Ju-sung. Standing between the blonde and Lee Min-soo, he says coldly, "School violence is prohibited here." With that, he helps the fallen Lee Min-soo up from the ground. The delinquents around them also recognize who he is. The blonde, who has repeatedly suffered humiliations, has already lost his mind. Grabbing the shovel, he charges forward. "Today I'm going to butcher you, then transfer schools and walk away from it all." Kang Ju-sung shifts his body to the side, dodging the shovel, as he calmly asks, "Are you really planning to kill someone?" As soon as he finishes speaking, he grabs the blonde's shoulder, executes a clean over-the-shoulder throw, and slams him heavily onto the ground. "Do you think you can shoulder the consequences of killing?" Seeing the tide turning against him, the blonde hurriedly shouts back, "What are you standing there for? Get him!" 3 lackeys lunge at once. But lackeys are just lackeys in the end. In Kang Ju-sung's eyes, they're nothing but one-punch problems. The fat guy in the orange shirt tries to attack from behind, but Kang Ju-sung ducks and slips aside. He locks both hands onto the arm the fat guy swings out, gives a pull using the man's own strength, and with another over-the-shoulder throw sends the fat body crashing down hard. With his fighting spirit up, Kang Ju-sung doesn't hesitate for a second and charges toward the last one. Terrified, that delinquent's legs go weak as he keeps backing away and begging for mercy. "Don't come any closer. I was just acting tough just now." But he still doesn't escape a thorough beating. Picking up his backpack, Lee Min-soo sighs and says to Kang Ju-sung, "Didn't you say school violence is prohibited?" Facing his challenge, Kang Ju-sung glances back at him and replies with a smile, "At a time like this, you should call me Hyung." With his head down, Lee Min-soo walks ahead in silence. "You're not my brother anymore. Stop meddling in my business. Staying with you will only drag me into trouble." But Kang Ju-sung doesn't agree. "Whether I'm trouble doesn't matter. You're my younger brother. No one can change that. No matter what you think, we're still brothers." Lee Min-soo pauses for a moment, then turns his face away. "Anyway, throw that watch away. You've been adopted by a rich family. You should get a new one. That watch no longer fits your status." Scratching his head, Kang Ju-sung says he doesn't care at all. "If anything, it's yours that should be replaced." On the way home, Lee Min-soo is still brooding over what happened. If today's incident ends up costing Kang Ju-sung his chance to get into university, that would be terrible. Kang Ju-sung is both the student council president and a guaranteed admission student to a medical university. He was originally named Lee Hyun-soo and is Lee Min-soo's biological older brother. Years ago he was adopted by a wealthy family, while Lee Min-soo was left behind in the orphanage. In Lee Min-soo's view, his brother should have long since withdrawn from his world and walked toward a completely different life. As for himself, he has to do everything he can to find his own means of survival. For him, that old clothing donation box abandoned in a corner is his path to survival. Hidden inside is all the money he has saved up during this period, 3.4 million won. He is still 6.6 million short of his 10 million won goal. So he begins to think, should he go to other schools and keep acting as a blood donation middleman? After all, the next blood drive at his own school won't be for another 3 months. As for why he has to make money so desperately in this way, you have to go back to when he left the orphanage 2 years ago. At that time, the state gave him 5 million won in support funds. But even with that amount added in, it wasn't enough to rent even a single toilet stall. On top of that, he was still a minor orphan, and almost no one was willing to hire him. Thus, with no choice at all, he decided to take this path even though he knew it was illegal, because it was the only way he could make money fast. Just as he finishes putting the money away and placing it back into the donation box, a sudden wow sounds by his ear. At some point, the blonde has already appeared behind him. Grabbing his shoulder, the blonde says, "Want me to tell you something interesting? If you get caught, all the money you earn through crime will be confiscated by the state in the end." Once he finishes, he leans close to his ear and bursts into loud laughter. Suppressing his anger, Lee Min-soo asks him what exactly he wants. With a sinister tone, the blonde replies, "Didn't I tell you? I'm going to make sure that every time you see me, you're scared enough to pee your pants." At the same time, on the other side, a classroom was in an uproar. The teacher pushed the door open, knocked on the desk, and told everyone to be quiet. He announced something, that Jo Chang-soo, who had once been sent to the reformatory, was coming back today. The teacher said he believed Jo Chang-soo had reflected seriously, and hoped the students would help him readjust to campus life. No sooner had he finished speaking than the classroom immediately exploded. Someone snickered and said, if Jo Chang-soo hears that kind of talk, the teacher is definitely getting beaten up. Someone else scoffed, the reformatory is nothing, you can get out after at most 4 weeks. But what happened next instantly shattered everyone's stereotypes. The former leader who had ruled a juvenile crime syndicate and committed every imaginable evil was now being pushed in a wheelchair. Eyes vacant, drool at the corner of his mouth, like an idiot who understood nothing. Just as everyone froze in shock, he let out a strange cry, then wet himself in front of the whole class. A hot stream ran down his pant leg onto the floor. At that moment, everyone realized, the so-called special law on reformation was no longer the kind of childish re-education of the past at all. At the same time, near an orphanage on the other side of town, police sirens wailed, a cordon blocked off the alley, and more people gathered to watch. A murder had just occurred here. In the car, the driver reminded Kong Ju-sung that there seemed to be an accident ahead and it might delay him from getting to the college party. Kong Ju-sung casually said, that's the orphanage where I used to live, it probably isn't anything serious. But then his gaze was suddenly fixed on something on the ground. His face changed dramatically, and he hurriedly pulled the car door open and rushed out. He knew the watch lying on the ground all too well. It belonged to his younger brother, Lee Min-soo. A strong sense of dread surged into his chest in an instant. He squeezed his way through the crowd with difficulty and pushed forward. The next second, his pupils contracted sharply. The one being pinned to the ground by several officers and handcuffed was none other than Lee Min-soo. According to Article 243 of the Special Law on Reformation, he would be sent to the Reformation Reformatory for centralized management. In the juvenile summary court set up inside the Reformation Reformatory, the judge looked at Lee Min-soo sitting in the defendant's seat and openly mocked him, "You're simply beyond saving. You still haven't shown a shred of remorse. Don't forget, you're here today because of a murder charge." With his head lowered, Lee Min-soo spoke in a weak voice, "I didn't kill that person." The judge completely ignored this and produced a blood-stained brick bearing his fingerprints, then read out every one of his past misdeeds one by one. After that he said coldly, if every guy who kills because of bullying, stealing money, or just hating someone gets forgiven, then this world would have become one gigantic graveyard long ago. In their eyes, the reason he committed a crime was that he couldn't trust adults and didn't know how to seek help from them. So the judge finally pronounced the sentence. In accordance with Article 28 of the Reformation and Reformatory Act, I hereby issue a labor reform detention order against you. Next, together with this entire busload of juvenile offenders, he would be sent straight to hell. On the transport vehicle, the instructors smiled broadly as they told them to quiet down. We're almost there. Not long after, the bus drove deep into the mountains. Looking out through the windows, the boys showed no vigilance at all toward this shabby, isolated place and only complained about how rundown it looked. That was, until they saw the other side. A group of girl offenders in tight training outfits with attractive figures were training on the field. They instantly forgot the word hell and started egging each other on with great interest, even snickering as they picked out girlfriends. The instructor had to hurriedly cut them off. That's the girls' juvenile reform center. Where we're going is on the other side. At this moment, leaning against the window in silence, all that echoed in Lee Min-soo's mind was the judge's line, "You must learn to trust adults." But he had clearly been telling the truth, and not a single adult was willing to believe him. So on what grounds were they demanding that he believe in adults? Soon, the bus arrived at the boys' juvenile reform center. As they got off, the delinquents were still full of disdain for the instructors. But the scene that followed instantly tore their arrogance to shreds. Not far away, a group of heavily tattooed muscular boys were running around the field, weeping as they ran, while letting out all kinds of strange animal cries. Some sounded like pigs, some like dogs, some shrieked like birds and beasts with their necks twisted. Seeing the pitiful state of these seniors, the newcomers burst into laughter. In their view, this was nothing but a ridiculous show. Just then, an instructor abruptly stopped blowing his whistle and shouted loudly, "Everyone stop exercising." Those boys with red-letter marks on their chests immediately halted in perfect unison, standing absolutely still and even breathing cautiously. The instructor then bellowed, "Show respect to the director, everyone, salute." All of them instantly raised their arms, their movements as uniform as a military unit. The director appeared on a platform, swept his expressionless gaze over them, and said, "Line up, little squad members." Lee Min-soo and the others looked at each other. Were they supposed to be like those guys too? Only then did the director reveal a strange little smile and slowly utter a single word, "Do." The newly arrived boys couldn't hear the implication behind that word and were still snickering, mocking how simple the order sounded. But in the next second, those seniors slammed their foreheads into the ground, prostrating themselves in the mud like livestock. In that instant, the laughter froze solid. Don't they know about the Juvenile Human Rights Act? The director looked at these so-called free and easy pests and said, "Looks like there are still a few undisciplined vermin." Then he roared, "Piglets." The next moment, those creatures who had long since lost their sense of self let out piercing pig squeals from their throats, like a pack of crazed wild boars. "I only need 10 minutes to turn a group of people into livestock." As soon as he finished, a newcomer was just about to shout back in anger when a fist smashed heavily into his face. Blood spattered everywhere, and teeth shot to the ground mixed with blood. Lee Min-soo's and the others' pupils all dilated at once. The piglets made bizarre noises and advanced on them step by step like starving wolves, beginning to vent the rage that had been suppressed in their hearts for so long. In just a few short minutes, most of them were laid out on the ground, groans and curses mingling together. The gates of hell had finally opened a crack for real. Narrowing his eyes, the director watched with satisfaction. "This is exactly how I like it. From now on, you are no longer pigs. You've been upgraded from pigs to servants. You may speak like humans." Only then did the boys he called servants speak up, trembling. "Understood." Judging the situation quickly, Lee Min-soo dropped to the ground and played dead, avoiding that first brutal wave of attacks. Of those who still refused to fall, some were chased and beaten by the wolf-like seniors. Some ran toward the instructors, begging desperately for help. But although these instructors wore kindly smiles on their faces, in their hearts they had long since written them off as scum and parasites of society. So their only method of education was precise yet non-lethal violence, expertly controlling their strength and avoiding vital spots, using beatings that would not kill to forcibly achieve the goal of instruction. All of this, Lee Min-soo took in with his own eyes. Nobody wanted to become a murderer, including these instructors. Just then, the director appeared in front of Lee Min-soo without a sound. "Pretty smart, huh, kid?" Looking down at the boy playing dead, he half smiled. "You should be at a loss the first time you come here. But instead you're pulling little tricks like this." Hearing this, as soon as Lee Min-soo tried to open his mouth to apologize, his face was stomped hard into the mud by a boot. "No need to apologize." Bending down, the director spoke with a hint of delight in his voice. "I like clever and sly little rats like you. From now on, you're a rat. And you'd better keep entertaining me." He gave an order on the spot. "From this moment on, you are only allowed to make rat noises." With no way out, Lee Min-soo could only grit his teeth and obey. Before long, 2 instructors came up to report that all the newcomers had been processed. They were stripped, lined up, and made to kneel on the ground, about to undergo their first evaluation phase. At the very same time, Kang Ju-sung had found Jo Chang-soo's home. After knocking and getting no answer, he took out a pair of scissors and popped the lock in a few quick moves. This skill was something he had practiced since childhood. As kids, he and his younger brother, Lee Min-soo, often broke into empty homes. Lee Min-soo would stand guard in the hallway, while he searched the rooms for anything valuable. In just 5 minutes, they could strip a house bare. They survived that way for several years, until they were caught red-handed once and sent to the orphanage, and that life finally came to an end. From then on, Kang Ju-sung never planned to go down that road again. But today, he had no choice but to break in once more. This time, he wasn't breaking in to steal, but to find out where his brother had been taken. And the person lying on the bed right now with both hands tied, was the only one who knew what the reformatory was like on the inside, Jo Chang-soo. Lying on the bed, Jo Chang-soo cried and shouted, "I pooped myself again. I pooped again." Looking at the nearly brain-damaged boy in front of him, Kang Ju-sung couldn't help asking himself, what kind of reformatory could turn you into this? They said Jo Chang-soo had fallen from a height and hit his head. But he could clearly see that there were no visible wounds or fractures on Jo Chang-soo's body. It would take far more than one accident to torture a demon like this into such a state. He tried to question him, but Jo Chang-soo couldn't even understand what he meant and only screamed instinctively, "I need to poop, I need to poop." At last, Kang Ju-sung couldn't hold back anymore and pressed one hand on his head. "For you, maybe it was just 4 short weeks. But I have no idea how long my brother will be stuck in that place. Answer my questions, now." His voice was thick with fear and despair. A man who had committed every possible crime had been turned into this in just 4 weeks. What would they do to his little brother? But by now, Jo Chang-soo had become a completely brainless wreck who could only whimper and beg, "I was wrong, please don't hit me anymore." Kang Ju-sung realized that pressing him further would be pointless. Just then he suddenly noticed a red letter mark on Jo Chang-soo's chest. It was the mark by which every boy sent into the reformatory was classified. The director would rate each person's case severity on a scale from A to D. The camera cuts back to the reformatory. The director stands on high ground, sweeping his gaze over this batch of new boys. In his eyes, most of them are just boring small fry. Until his gaze stops on one person, Lee Min-soo. He suddenly stands up, his eyes flashing with excitement. I knew it, my eyes don't lie. Congratulations, Rat Lee Min-soo. You're even more violent than you look. I didn't expect the only A grade in this batch of goods to be you. In the coming training period, you're going to have a particularly delightful time. A bone-deep sense of danger shoots up along Lee Min-soo's spine straight into his brain. After asking around, Kang Ju-sung arrives at the gate of a girls' middle school. It happens to be dismissal time, and groups of girls stream out of the school gate. One of the girls suddenly notices something, hurriedly tugs at her snack-eating best friend, and, blushing, tells her to look off into the distance. A boy wearing headphones is riding a bicycle while reading a book. That overly dazzling face instantly turns them into cautious, ordinary girls who can't help wanting to get closer. The girl in a mask musters her courage and walks up, asking flirtatiously, "Are you a student teacher?" Kang Ju-sung takes off his headphones and answers politely, "Sorry, I'm not." Then he asks in return, "But I'd like to ask you something." The casual smile he shows seems to carry a dangerous kind of charm that hits them right in the heart. They even half-joke, "We'll answer your question, and we can throw in our home addresses too." Kang Ju-sung explains that he's looking for someone named Gu Se-min. The moment they hear that name, the expressions on the two girls' faces change. They point into the nearby crowd. "You're not here for that crazy woman, are you? She just got out of the reformatory." The next second, they suddenly realize that the gaze from over there has fallen on them, and they hurriedly pull their hands back and walk off, pretending nothing happened. Once he confirms his target, Kang Ju-sung strides forward and stops in front of Gu Se-min. "Do you need something?" He gets straight to the point. "I want to ask about what it's like inside the reformatory." At the word reformatory, Gu Se-min shoves him aside hard and says coldly, "Get lost. Don't bother me." Kang Ju-sung quickly bows his head to apologize, explaining that he didn't mean to offend her. It's just that his younger brother has been sent there. Gu Se-min does not stop walking, until a helmet suddenly comes flying at him. "Get on," she says. "Stuff about the reformatory shouldn't be talked about here." On the road, Kang Ju-sung asks her what made her change her mind. Gu Se-min answers flatly, because her younger brother is still in there too. To her, the reformatory can be summed up in two words: absolute hell. Elsewhere, the newly admitted boys have already gone through 3 hours of high-intensity training. Their muscles are twitching all over, they are gasping for breath, and even standing up straight is extremely difficult. All they can hope for is that this hellish corporal punishment will end soon. But the next command only makes the nightmare continue. At the instructor's order, everyone keeps training. Lee Min-soo has to respond with squeaking rat sounds, while the other boys are ordered to let out pig squeals in unison. The instructor suddenly explodes. "Who taught you to squeal like that? On 1 you squeal like pigs, on 2 you shout Ayo. Start over." So, to the count of 1 and 2, they do squats, standing and sitting, while letting out pig squeals and Ayo shouts in perfect rhythm. As for Lee Min-soo, all he has to do is keep making rat noises. The overlapping cries of livestock echo across the field. Standing on high ground, the director looks intoxicated. No matter when you hear it, the sound of livestock is always so beautiful. Just then, one boy collapses from exhaustion. What greets him is not concern, but a flurry of kicks and punches. The instructor announces with a blank face, "Someone fell behind." Everyone starts over. Clutching his stomach, the boy is almost in tears as he shouts, "My stomach really hurts, can't I go to the bathroom?" The instructor sneers, "Weren't you all cocky when you first came in? And you can't even handle this?" The director notices what's happening and raises a hand to stop the instructor from continuing the beating. He walks up to the boy, his tone suddenly turning gentle. "You must have been holding it in for a long time before you got up the courage to say it, right? Don't be afraid, stand up. I'll give you a chance to go to the bathroom." Then he looks around the field and raises his voice. "Who else wants to go to the bathroom?" Seeing how understanding he appears, the boys who had been holding it also start raising their hands one after another. Soon, the line of those wanting to go to the bathroom stretches long. The instructor beside them keeps reminding them, "Anyone else? If you don't go now, there won't be another chance." Once no one else raises a hand, the instructor promptly announces, "The rest of you, keep training." Standing in the line, Lee Min-soo quietly watches all this. He does the math in his head. If they really were going to the bathroom, then the ones who don't go would have to keep training. So of course everyone would pretend to have a stomachache to get in line. But just now, the director's attitude suddenly changed, and that is what bothers him the most. Kindness without a price is like wild fruit in the mountains. The sweeter and more tempting it is, the more likely it's poisonous. He hesitates for a moment, then still raises his hand and lets out a rat-like squeak. The instructor runs up and asks his name and what he wants. Lee Min-soo is about to keep squeaking as ordered when the instructor roars, "Speak human language." So he says, "I don't want to go to the bathroom anymore, I want to go back to training." As soon as the words come out, the instructor clamps a hand around his neck and drags him out of the line. You think this is a joke? Lee Min-soo explains, maybe I was just pushing myself too hard. I got scared for a second and thought I needed the bathroom. But I'm fine now. The instructor shoves him back hard. Get back to your spot. I'll be watching you. Leaving the bathroom line, Lee Min-soo immediately becomes the butt of the others' jokes. They sneer and mock him but fail to understand. These people never saw them as humans in the first place, only as livestock. And livestock have no such right as going to the bathroom. After a while, the boys who wanted the bathroom are led away as a group. The director stretches out his hand and once again shows a gentle smile. Whether human or animal, everyone has to relieve themselves. Holding it in isn't good for your body. You have 30 minutes of rest time. Hearing this, the boys can't help breaking into barely suppressed, triumphant grins. But then the director suddenly turns his head and points at them, shouting harshly, "What are you smiling at? I wasn't talking about you. The ones who didn't go to the bathroom get to rest. As for you lot, from now on, we begin human centipede training." Standing in the formation, Lee Min-soo secretly rejoices, at least he pulled out in time. A centipede is a type of arthropod. It might have 15 pairs of legs, or more than 170. No matter how many, in their eyes it still ranks below the level of man, and even below beasts. The chosen boys are forced to line up one behind the other, each with his head pressed to the backside of the person in front, crawling in a centipede-like handstand. Supporting themselves with their hands, if anyone falls, the timer is reset. This is the director's custom-built, fully automatic digestive toilet. During the process, the instructor lashes their backs with a stick over and over. Didn't you bugs want to go to the bathroom? Why won't any of you do it now? 30 minutes later, the training finally ends. The instructor closes their bodies down with cold water to keep the stench from polluting the air. The boys who had been as wild as beasts just 3 hours ago have already turned into livestock at the mercy of others' torment. The chime over the loudspeaker rings to signal the end of class, announcing that today's training session is temporarily over. Next comes mealtime and dorm assignment. Staring at the slop-like mixture in their trays, with no utensils and no seats, forced to sit on the floor and grab fistfuls of it into their mouths, Lee Min-soo can't help asking himself, is this really food meant for humans? Before eating, an instructor orders them to sing a song of gratitude in unison. Still puzzled about what a song of gratitude is, he hears the instructor give the signal. And the old inmates immediately break into wide smiles and sing out with one voice. We are not human, we are pigs and dogs. Whatever we're given, we eat. The lyrics of this song have been framed and hang in a place of honor at the very center of the cafeteria. Only now does Lee Min-soo realize that these people not only call them livestock with their mouths, they systematically strip away their human dignity through rules, customs, and even songs. He grabs the food and shoves it into his mouth, one handful after another. No matter whether his assigned identity here is rat, pig, or dog, the only thing he can do now is endure and hold out until the day he gets out. Meanwhile, Gu Se-min has brought Kong Ju-sung to the mountaintop. From here, they can see the entire Reformation Reformatory laid out below. You really think that place is hell? Gu Se-min says coldly, hell is better than that place. That place is not somewhere humans are meant to be. I have nightmares every day about every single day I spent in there. If I don't take a ton of sleeping pills, I can't sleep at all. She glances at him. Looking at you like this, you really do care about your brother. Lowering his head, Kong Ju-sung speaks in a slightly tight voice. That was what my mom told me on her deathbed. She told me to protect him for the rest of my life. And in the end, I still failed. That's why I came to you. I have to do something now. If I wait any longer, it'll be too late. And among everyone who came out of the reformatory, you're the only one who looks more or less unchanged. Tilting her head, Gu Se-min asks, you want to know how I managed to walk out of that place alive? He grabs onto this sliver of hope immediately. So there is a way to survive? How did you get out safely? In the next second, Gu Se-min suddenly goes vacant and dumb, like this, by acting like an idiot. Thinking she's making fun of him, Kong Ju-sung quickly frowns and cuts her off. Please, be serious. I'm in no mood to laugh. But she flips her hair up with one hand, revealing a scalp covered in dense burn scars. Kong Ju-sung's pupils quake violently. That place is where the craziest people in the country are all crammed together. If something flares up in the heat of the moment, how far do you think they'll go? You could never imagine it. They'll actually shove a person's head into a vat of boiling oil. That idiot act you just saw, that was my ticket out. They decided I was broken, so they let me out early. After hearing this, Kong Ju-sung can only mutter apologies under his breath. But Gu Se-min says coldly, don't you dare pity me, or I'll kill you. Have you asked what the letter marks mean? When everyone is gathered at the boys and girls training grounds, they assign each kid a grade based on the nature of their crimes, then assign them to rooms by grade. Room E, ordinary violent offenses. Room D, drug-related. Room C, theft and fraud. As for Room B, where I used to be, that's for severe assault offenders. And given your brother's situation, that would be Room A. That level is reserved only for the most vicious, the so-called murderers. At this moment, in Room A, the instant Lee Min-soo steps through the door, he feels a gaze like a beast locking onto its prey. He knows this is provocation. If he backs down now, he'll be trampled on the spot. So he forces himself to stand straight and walks forward with his head held high. This guy doesn't know how to introduce himself or what. One of them speaks, his knuckles cracking as he does. He steps forward and questions Lee Min-soo. Where are you from? Why are you here? Lee Min-soo answers, I'm from an orphanage. I used to attend Seongrak High School. As soon as he finishes, the room erupts in laughter. Someone looks at him with a mocking grin, another elite from an orphanage. Huh. I know a guy from Seongrak High, 3rd year, named Jo Chang-soo. Shut up. A cold bark cuts him off. The one who spoke clams up instantly, cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. The one who just stopped them is the long-haired senior. In this room, he is clearly the top dog. Why were you locked up? If you're assigned to this room, you must have done something big. Without hesitation, Lee Min-soo says, murder. The air freezes at once. Except for the long-haired guy. Everyone else's eyes bulge with sweat running down their faces. Someone mutters under his breath, no way, he's bluffing, right? Their reaction leaves Lee Min-soo quietly surprised. Could he really be the only actual murderer here? He had assumed everyone's crimes would be lumped together. But it seems murder is the top-tier offense here. And the seriousness of one's crime appears to decide how much say one has in this room. At that moment, a senior looks over at the long-haired guy. Looks like our pet dog has to keep his job. Before Lee Min-soo can process this, pet dog? So this long-haired guy isn't the boss? He's actually at the very bottom here? But the next second, he realizes his mistake. The one being referred to isn't the long-haired guy at all, but the white-haired boy he is using as a chair. The white-haired boy is lying on the floor, being used as a human bench. The long-haired guy complains, sitting like this is really uncomfortable. The moment the white-haired boy plucks up the courage to say a single human word, another senior kicks him over. Who said you could speak human language? The white-haired boy can only let out weak woof-woof sounds, as if he truly believes he's a dog. This scene is exactly the same as when they forced Lee Min-soo to act like a rat earlier. The weak, whether outside or inside, are always the ones who get crushed. In that moment, deep inside, Lee Min-soo makes a decision. He would rather bear the label of murderer than ever accept being treated as a pet. At 7 in the evening, it's reflection time. Every boy in the reformatory must write 10 self-reflection essays a day. Sitting at the desk, Lee Min-soo doesn't even know what to write. After all, that blonde punk who bullied him wasn't killed by him. Suddenly, a crumpled paper ball lands on his desk. Looking up, he sees two seniors tossing sheets of reflection paper back and forth like a baseball. He asks them, aren't you going to write your reflection essays? They answer with disdain, what's the point of writing that crap? Our pet dog writes all of it for us anyway. They even tell him he might as well not write either and just hand his in to the pet dog too. Right then, the white-haired boy clutches his crotch and lets out 2 dog barks. Only after getting permission does he whisper, I want to go to the bathroom. The 2 seniors don't stop him, they just nod casually. But just as the white-haired boy is about to unzip his pants in front of the toilet, a heavy kick slams into his back. Smiling, the senior says, you're a dog now, not a human. You know how dogs are supposed to pee, don't you? Under their supervision, the white-haired boy can only grit his teeth and obey. At 8 in the evening, it's bath time. Each person gets only 3 minutes, and is only allowed to use water and a single bar of soap. And that bar of soap is shared among 50 people. At 9, the instructors make their rounds and take roll call. The seniors and Lee Min-soo answer one by one in order. When it's the white-haired boy's turn, he suddenly lets out a sharp dog bark. You don't even need to think to know, that's the identity he has been forced to perform. If he doesn't do it, then once the inspection is over, he'll face endless retaliation from the seniors. If he does it, he finishes the instructor's education. No matter which he chooses, he can't escape a beating. So he can only choose the option that shortens the suffering the most, cooperate with the instructors in exchange for a few fewer punches from the seniors. At 10 at night, the lights go out. No matter what he does, Lee Min-soo can't fall asleep. Part of it is the pain in his body. Part of it is the white-haired boy's intermittent sobbing beside him. The seniors only mutter impatiently, you're crying like you're a person. At the word person, the white-haired boy immediately covers his mouth, tears streaming down his face as he forces himself to make rat-like squeaks. In the reformatory, they have to get up extremely early. At 5:30 in the morning, it's cleaning and roll call. After roll call until 6, the staff deliver breakfast. At the table, Lee Min-soo asks, why aren't we eating in the cafeteria? The bald senior explains, because there's outdoor training this afternoon, we're eating indoors today. This time the instructors are very considerate and have given them spoons. Lee Min-soo continues, what about the pet dog? doesn't he get to eat? Everyone's gaze automatically shifts under the table. Only then does he realize the random table they've set up here is actually being held up by the white-haired boy's body. You should at least give him some food while he's working, Lee Min-soo can't help saying. The bald senior laughs and tells him not to worry, we treat Poppy like a friend. The tattooed senior at his side chimes in, yeah, where else are you gonna find a friend you can hand-feed yourself? They dump all the leftovers from their plates into one mess, stir it together, and pour it straight onto the floor, treating it as dog food, Poppy's exclusive meal. The white-haired boy's face is full of disgust and terror, but he can only get down on all fours and eat like a dog. Just as he's about to open his mouth, Lee Min-soo suddenly kicks the table over and shouts angrily, don't eat it. The seniors stare in bewilderment. Looking at the white-haired boy, Lee Min-soo says, do you really think you're a dog? But to his surprise, there is not the slightest hint of hope or joy at being saved in the boy's expression, only utter terror. All of this stems from one person, the long-haired senior, Gu Se-jun. He warns Lee Min-soo, this place has its own hierarchy and rules. You came too late, so you follow the rules that are already here. If you don't like them, then climb your way up and become the leader. But before that, you have to beat Poppy. Because once you challenge him, Poppy is above you in rank. If you lose, you'll become this room's new pet dog. Playing this kind of ranking game is so childish, Lee Min-soo mutters. But as soon as the words leave his mouth, the white-haired boy's eyes lock onto him like a starving wolf's. He's just about to say they should knock it off, when the white-haired boy's fist smashes into his face. For Poppy, this might be his only chance to shed the status of pet. He can't let it slip away. The seniors around them immediately start cheering loudly, nice one, Poppy. This is your chance to wipe away your shame. They turn and shout at Lee Min-soo, why aren't you fighting back? Planning to be the new pet dog? Of course, Lee Min-soo knows that losing here means hitting rock bottom. But the white-haired boy in front of him, punching him while crying and saying he's sorry. This jumble of emotions leaves him unable to strike back for the moment. Meanwhile, over on the other side, Kang Ju-sung arrives at the orphanage. The director smiles and says he's enlisting tomorrow and asks if he's packed everything. Holding a penguin plushie, Kang Ju-sung says, I've got it all. These things are treasures to me and Lee Min-soo. The director can't help sighing that the two brothers were the most troublesome kids in the orphanage. Especially Kang Ju-sung himself, who was always fighting with other kids and scaring them so badly they didn't even dare go near the orphanage. But Kang Ju-sung just laughs and says the director has it wrong. Sure, I did fight a lot. But the one they were really scared of wasn't me, it was my brother. He's the one who's truly dangerous and crazy. Once he snaps, no one can stop him. At that moment, back in the reformatory, the white-haired boy is crying out apologies, but his fists and feet don't pause for a second. There is only one thought in his mind. He can't go on being Poppy like before. Beaten down, Lee Min-soo can only curl up on the ground with his hands over his head. Those seniors who had feared him for his murderer label now show their true colors. The bald senior sneers, this is why your parents abandoned you. You're just a piece of loser trash. Before he can finish the sentence, a heavy straight punch explodes against the back of his head. As if some tightly sealed switch has been suddenly flipped, Lee Min-soo changes in an instant. With a single punch he knocks the bald senior out cold on the spot. Everyone else is completely stunned. Especially the white-haired boy, Moon Hyun-jun, who is frozen where he stands. Just as Kang Ju-sung had said, the truly terrifying lunatic is Lee Min-soo. Some buried keyword deep in his heart has been triggered. Right now he has only one thought, I'm going to make every last one of you into Poppy. At that moment, a senior kicks him hard in the back from behind. Grease seniors all jump him at once and start a group beating. Make all of us Poppy? Are you insane? Stop putting on an act, this is room A. This place is full of people who think they're tough. We've already been pretty generous, seeing as you're an abandoned orphan. Before he can finish, a toilet plunger is rammed straight into his mouth. Rage fills Lee Min-soo's eyes. Shut up. He smashes a furious punch into him and the plunger actually breaks in two. The other two seniors finally can't sit still anymore and charge up, snarling, I'm gonna kill you. But in the next instant, they are forced to stop. Wielding the broken plunger like a weapon, eyes wild, Lee Min-soo points it at them. You said you're gonna kill me? Have you ever actually killed anyone before? Meanwhile, at a golf course elsewhere, a man idly swings a club, and his subordinates around him immediately clap and flatter him. This man is Assemblyman Kang. Right now, Kang Ju-sung is kneeling beside him. Assemblyman Kang glances at him. How did you even come up with this idea? Kang Ju-sung says that although it's still early, he has already decided to enlist. My first goal is to deal with the youth problem. That will also be good for father's political career. Assemblyman Kang sneers. My son who thinks of me just had his medical school admission revoked. Explain it, because your brother got sent to the reformatory, you want to get close to that place in your own way, is that it? But even if you enlist, there's no guarantee you'll be assigned to the juvenile reformatory. That's why I need your help. If anyone can make it happen, it's you, father. But Assemblyman Kong isn't buying it, and why should I clean up the mess your brother made? Just when Kong Jusong thinks all he'll get is rejection, Assemblyman Kong suddenly changes his tune. Still, if you perform well in the future and help me into the presidential seat, this matter isn't off the table. Come on then, help Daddy become president. Back at the reformatory, Lee Min-soo is like a berserk beast, roaring at the seniors. You pack of poppies, ready to get smashed? But the next second, one of the seniors he knocked down earlier suddenly springs up and locks both his arms from behind. The bald senior takes the chance to slam a punch into his head. For a moment, Lee Min-soo's whole body goes rigid and he collapses weakly. The two seniors look at each other, a flicker of panic in both their eyes. He's not dead, is he? This wasn't me, you hear. Just as they're trying to shove the blame off, the fallen Lee Min-soo suddenly bursts up, ramming the back of his head into the jaw of the one behind him, then drives a kick straight into the bald senior's groin. In an instant, the situation flips again. At that moment, Gu Se-jun walks over slowly. Your trigger words must be mom or abandoned. As soon as you hear them, you fly into a rage, right? How heartbreaking. Does your mom know? The son she threw away ended up a murderer. Before he finishes, Lee Min-soo thrusts the sharp end of the broken plunger at him, but Gu Se-jun catches it securely in one hand. Apologize, or I'll gouge your eyes out. Looking down at him, Gu Se-jun says, why would I apologize? For your mom abandoning you? Or for the fact you killed someone? That's enough. He releases his grip and suddenly shouts, it wasn't me. He started it. Then he turns around, squats, and clasps his head in his hands. Before Lee Min-soo can figure out what's happening, he turns his head and sees 3 fully armed guards already storming into the room. You little maggot, causing trouble the moment you get here. All the other seniors are already standing against the wall with their hands on their heads, playing the bystanders. What follows is a merciless beating. Batons crash down on him over and over, and he barely has any chance to react. Watching, Gu Se-jun calmly adds more detail. Lee Min-soo brandished a weapon and attacked everyone in the room, causing multiple injuries. I'll write out the full account in the report. One of the guards asks casually, you lot are sure you didn't do anything? This was all his doing? Everyone answers yes in uncanny unison. The white-haired boy hesitates for a second, then also murmurs yes. Like a dead dog, Lee Min-soo is dragged out of the room by the guard. Waiting for him is 15 days of solitary confinement. The isolation cell is also called the punishment room. It's specifically used to separate troublemakers. The days he spends here don't count toward his total detention time, which means he's just pushed his own sentence back by 15 days. He must endure 24-hour, no blind spot surveillance, forced to stay kneeling during the day until he collapses from exhaustion. His hands and feet are bound, and at meals he can only lower his head and eat directly with his mouth. It's only when he uses the toilet that they briefly unbind him. Worse still, there is no toilet paper, he can only rely on the cold water tap behind him. Every night at 7, even in solitary, he must still write reflection essays as usual. This time, what he writes is twice as long as before, but almost all of it is analysis and notes about the seniors in his room. In his view, everyone here has issues. But the one with the biggest, most dangerous problems is the long-haired Gu Se-jun. One way or another, someday he has to drag that guy down. Without realizing it, he dozes off on the floor. In his dream, a house is engulfed in roaring flames. He and his brother stand before the firelight, their shadows stretched out long. He jolts awake, tears still lingering at the corners of his eyes. He bangs his head against the floor over and over, cursing through clenched teeth. Maybe it's this place that forces those already terrible memories to resurface again and again. It makes him afraid to sleep, because he knows that as soon as he closes his eyes, he'll fall back into the same nightmare. 15 days pass quickly. Taken from the isolation cell, Lee Min-soo is brought back to the room. The moment he stands at the doorway, he stares straight at the seniors, his gaze like a blade. Just as he's about to explode again, the seniors all suddenly break into smiles in perfect sync. We're sorry. We went too far before. From today on, Poppy doesn't have to act like Poppy anymore either. Let's get along from now on. Seeing their sudden repentance, a flicker of confusion rises in Lee Min-soo's heart. He nearly believes they're sincerely extending an olive branch. But just as he's about to accept their apology, a foot slams down hard on the back of his head. The one who kicks him is Gu Se-jun. Looking down, he sneers, "Were you looking for me? Mommy's little baby?" Two seniors quickly move in, pinning down his hands and feet, then shove a stinking sock into his mouth. Every movement is so practiced it's clear they've rehearsed this before. They hoist him up and carry him step by step toward the bathroom. Walking ahead, Gu Se-jun says, "I know you missed me. But, someone who missed you even more is waiting inside." As he speaks, the bald senior slowly strips off his clothes and steps closer and closer to where Lee Min-soo is in the bathroom. In that moment, the only thought in Lee Min-soo's mind is that it's over. He has already braced himself for his reputation to be destroyed and his humanity to be trampled completely. Yet right then, a voice slices through the air like a knife. That's enough. Everyone freezes where they are. A newly arrived guard stands in the doorway, coldly taking in the scene. Judging from that uniform, you're new here, huh? Gu Sejun frowns. We've already cleared this with the higher-ups. Don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong. No one's approval counts for anything here, the man says evenly. As for how you'll be dealt with, that'll be decided later. He walks up step by step and reaches a hand out toward Lee Min-soo. When Lee Min-soo looks up and sees his face clearly, he freezes. The newcomer is his older brother, Kang Ju-sung. Smiling at his younger brother, he says, "Let's go home, little brother." Kang Ju-sung had already mapped out a full plan in his mind. As long as Lee Min-soo followed his arrangements, he would soon regain his freedom. But in the next second, Lee Min-soo simply stepped around him and smashed a heavy punch into the bald senior's jaw. "You bastard, what were you trying to do just now with your pants off?" He certainly knew the real culprit wasn't the bald guy, but the room's boss standing before him, Gu Sejun. So without a moment's hesitation, he squared up and directly challenged Gu Sejun. At the same time, the other three seniors surrounded Kang Ju-sung. They looked the overly young-looking guard up and down and drawled, "You look way too green to be a guard." Still, every room has its own rules, and this is allowed. "How about you follow our rules too?" Kang Ju-sung replied coolly, "You mean the rule about fighting? Sounds like I'll have to follow the rules as well then." The seniors exchanged knowing grins. "Then don't you go regretting it later and trying to pull rank as a guard." Kang Ju-sung smiled faintly and only said that he always keeps his word. On the other side, no matter how Lee Min-soo threw his punches, he couldn't even graze a single hair on Go Sejun. The other boy dodged with ease while mocking him. "You don't even have the strength to stay on your feet, and you're still yapping here." Taking that opening, he glanced over at how the other seniors were doing. And in that brief instant, he saw that Kang Ju-sung had already subdued all of them before they could even resist. While he was still wondering what had happened, a gap appeared in Lee Min-soo's attacks without his noticing. Distracted, he took a solid shot to the chin from Lee Min-soo. Lee Min-soo crowed triumphantly, "You're fighting me, keep your eyes on me." A vein pulsed at Gu Sejun's temple where he'd taken the punch. Up to now, he'd thought he was just going easy on the kid and assumed Lee Min-soo would back down once he understood the gap. But now, he decided to personally teach this guy a lesson. He would show him what an absolute difference in strength really means. Do you know why Poppy became Poppy? Refusing to admit defeat, Lee Min-soo got up again and lashed out with a kick. "Poppy my ass, what's that got to do with me? Poppy used to be the one in charge of this room, just like you, no idea how weak he really was, doing whatever he pleased." Being crushed one-sidedly, Lee Min-soo was well aware of the disparity in their strength. But he still felt that he absolutely could not lose this easily. He swung again. "In this room, the most pathetic person is a bastard boss like you." What greeted him was a single, heavy blow. The air seemed to fall silent in an instant. He felt all the strength drained from his body, his consciousness wavering. His thoughts spun wildly. "Damn it, getting wrecked by that bastard who insulted Mom. Aside from that one cheap shot kick, I haven't even touched him once. What's even more humiliating is that every time I get beaten, Kang Ju-sung is right there." Standing off to the side, Kang Ju-sung asked if he still had any breath left in him. "Can you still stay alive long enough to answer me?" The next moment, Lee Min-soo blacked out completely. Looking at his unconscious younger brother, Kang Ju-sung let out a helpless sigh and hoisted him up over his shoulder. Watching them leave, Gu Sejun asked coldly, "Where are you planning to take him?" "He still needs a bit more discipline." Kang Ju-sung answered calmly, "Obviously to solitary confinement. He disrupted order, so he has to be punished." Then Gu Sejun suddenly spoke up. "You did pretty well just now. How about a fight with me?" Kang Ju-sung shot back, "Do you want to get written up? If not, pretend you never said that. And one more thing, no fighting. That's straight from your sister." At the mention of his sister, Gu Sejun froze. When he woke up again, Lee Min-soo found himself back in the isolation cell. Gritting his teeth, he swore to himself, next time he got back to the room, he was going to shave that guy's hair off. A sudden cramp twisted his stomach. Clutching his belly, he squatted over the squat toilet. When he was done, he discovered that not a single drop was coming out of the tap, which meant that after he wiped his butt, his hands couldn't be washed clean at all. Just as his scalp was crawling at the thought, he saw toilet paper sitting off to the side. He found it odd. This time in solitary he not only had toilet paper, his hands and feet weren't bound either. Only then did he realize he seemed to have forgotten a very important fact. As his awareness came back, he slammed his fist into the iron door and yelled at the guard outside. "What are you doing here? Are you insane? Why would you drop out of a good medical school to come to this damn place? Since you've got a stepfather now, just go live your own life. Why play the hero and come save me? Hurry up and get the hell out of here. Don't waste your life on a murderer like me. Why would you throw your future away for a killer?" Outside the door, Kang Jusung's voice was very calm. No matter who calls you a murderer, I believe you didn't kill anyone. Because you're my brother. Then he laid out his entire plan. As long as Lee Min-soo followed the steps, he could leave here as soon as possible, so long as he didn't keep getting thrown into solitary like an idiot every few days. Lee Min-soo said he had no problem with the plan, but before that, he had one request. I want to fight that long-haired bastard one more time. Kang Jusung asked him, you know you'll lose, why fight? Lee Min-soo clenched his fists tight, because he insulted Mom. Hearing this, Kang Jusung fell silent for a long moment. Then he slowly spoke. Anything else, I can endure, but not someone insulting Mom. However, if you lose again to the guy who insulted Mom, I'll kill you myself. After 15 days of solitary confinement ended, when a few vicious-looking seniors closed in on him, Lee Min-soo instead lay down on the floor on his own. He imitated Poppy's posture and pretended to be a pet dog. That was the first strategy he and his brother had worked out during those 15 days. First endure and submit, then wait for a chance to turn the tables in one strike. Soon, he became the second Poppy in the room. The seniors used his back as their chessboard. But in less than an hour, he couldn't stand it anymore. He suddenly leapt to his feet and roared, startling two of the seniors. They glared at him viciously. What? Don't want to be Poppy anymore? Need us to rearrange your rank? Veins bulged all over Lee Min-soo's body. Right now, all he wanted was to smash the face in front of him to pulp. But he and his brother had agreed he had to endure for 5 days. After those 5 days, even the director would be led by Kang Jusung, setting the stage perfectly for his revenge. For now, he could only keep putting up with it. Thinking of this, he gritted his teeth, forced himself back down, wiped the dust off his back, and then used his clean stomach as the chessboard. He let them start a new game. By the second day, he could already clean the room with the nimbleness of a spider. On the third day, he and the white-haired Poppy were jointly responsible for the seniors' reflection essays. By the fourth day, not only could he peeth like a pet dog on command, he could also eat the seniors' specially made, cursed cuisine. He let out exaggerated cries about how delicious it was. He knew very clearly that as long as he got through today, everything would be over. But that inhuman, mixed slop rice still drove him running to the bathroom to vomit like crazy. The white-haired boy followed behind, half concerned and half trying to please him. If you puke it all out, you won't have any strength. Smiling, he offered him a piece of candy and whispered, don't tell the others, or I'll get beaten. In here, let's just be good Poppies and stop overthinking it. This unexpected bit of kindness left Lee Min-soo momentarily at a loss. But he knew very well that his days as Poppy would end today. Yet accidents tend to happen right when a plan is about to be completed. During a group outdoor activity, the seniors were playing a frisbee game using Lee Min-soo and the white-haired boy as their Poppies. Chasing after the frisbee, the white-haired boy accidentally crashed into someone from the kitchen crew. The kitchen senior he hit glared darkly and asked, "What's your problem? You looking for a fight with us?" Shaking all over, the white-haired boy whispered, "Do you want to play frisbee with us?" Elsewhere, Gu Se-jun was lying on the ground resting, still wondering how on earth Kang Jusung knew his sister. A roar suddenly cut through his thoughts. "Is that thing on the ground your dog? You can't even control your own dog. Was that on purpose? Are you trying to start a war with the kitchen?" The moment one of their own room members was hit, the other seniors rolled up their sleeves and shouted back, "If you want to fight, bring it on. We're not scared." Gu Se-jun held them back. "Forget it, don't escalate this. Be rational. There's no need to blow it up." The kitchen senior gave 2 cold laughs, then drove a heavy kick straight into the white-haired boy's head. "Seeing how rational you are really pisses me off." Seeing this, the surrounding seniors all turned their heads away, pretending not to see. Starting a war with the kitchen over a Poppy really wasn't worth it. Lee Min-soo couldn't help asking, "The guards aren't going to step in?" For scuffles like this, the guards can't be bothered. Usually we settle it ourselves. Hearing that, he froze where he stood, his face darkening to something terrifying. On one side was the white-haired boy who had once handed him a piece of candy and shown him a bit of kindness. On the other side were the plan and promise he'd made with his brother. In the end, he chose to turn around and walk away. As he beat the white-haired boy, the kitchen senior jeered loudly, "Beating on your pet dog feels damn good. Can you lend him to me for a few days? Let me have some fun?" Before he could finish, a frisbee slammed right into his face. He didn't even have time to react before he toppled to the ground. Everyone followed the frisbee's trajectory with their eyes and was stunned. The one who'd thrown it was none other than Lee Min-soo, who had just turned away to leave. He stared icily at them. "You scum weren't done making a mess outside? You had to come here and keep at it? At the end of the day, all of you here are nothing but livestock, a bunch of livestock with no dignity and no spine. That's why you pick on people even weaker than you." He was just about to help the white-haired boy up when Gu Se-jun walked over. "Didn't I tell you to stay out of it? Do you not understand human speech? The red-haired kitchen senior came over as well and grabbed Gu Sejun's shoulder. "What's your deal? Want me to tell our boss that you're the ones declaring war on the kitchen?" "Go ahead and tell him if you're declaring war," Gu Sejun replied flatly. "But before that, I have to deal with our internal business first." At the mention of a fight, the delinquent boys nearby immediately closed in to watch the show. Lee Min-soo knew he had already broken the first promise, but the other promise, about mom, was one he would never break. Gu Sejun casually tied his hair back and looked at him. "You want another beating?" Lee Min-soo didn't back down an inch. "Let's fight. Whoever wins is the boss of this room." At the same time, in the classroom, Kang Ju-sung had already finished all the preparations. In the reformatory, all the kids are minors, and every week they have set times for basic classes. During class, all authority is handed over to the classroom manager. In other words, as long as they're in the classroom, the manager has the final say. Kang Ju-sung had seized this window and obtained the position of classroom manager. According to his plan, today Lee Min-soo would defeat Gu Sejun on the classroom battlefield he designed and become the new boss of the room. The dueling ground was a cramped space made by pushing several desks together. He checked his watch, puzzled that the time had already come but no one had shown up. The noise outside caught his attention. He looked out the window and froze. The duel between the two had already started downstairs. He sighed helplessly, stepped onto the windowsill and shouted down, "Lee Min-soo, you really are a bastard." For these 15 days, he had drilled the same combo into Lee Min-soo every single day. Step 1, hook punch. Step 2, heavy punch to the abdomen. Step 3, uppercut. Step 4, midsection kick. Then a front kick into a spinning kick, followed by a whip kick, and finally finishing with a straight punch. Although Gu Sejun was quite strong, he'd never received systematic training. To Kang Du-sung, the other boys' moves were all flash and no substance, with almost no continuity between motions. As long as he could force Gu Sejun into a corner on the mini-ring set up in the classroom, leaving him nowhere to dodge, that combo would definitely land and secure the win. But now, the entire plan had been ruined by Lee Min-soo himself. Kang Ju-sung ran downstairs, cursing inwardly that his little brother was the same as ever, never saving him a moment of peace. By the time he arrived, the delinquents had formed a solid human wall around the fight, and he couldn't see a thing. He knew the plan was completely off the rails now. If he wanted to stop it, he'd have to invoke his authority as a guard and forcibly shut it down. Just then, a piece of popcorn flew his way. The director lazily asked him, "What do you think you're doing? Why are you ruining my fun?" Seeing it was the director, Kang Ju-sung immediately stood at attention and saluted, explaining that he was a new guard and had been about to stop the kids from fighting. The director countered, "And why would you stop them? Have you never seen those wildlife shows about the animal kingdom? When a snake decides to eat a mouse, what does the film crew do? Of course they do nothing, because that's part of the natural order. Same here, we don't interfere with their fights, we respect the prison's order. Besides, watching them fight is entertaining." Seeing the unhidden madness in his eyes, Kang Ju-sung understood that there was only one thing he could do now: obey the director's order. In the ring, time and again, Lee Min-soo tried to attack with the combo, but he still couldn't so much as brush Gu Sejun. Instead, he kept taking punches to the face. Just as his brother had said, without walls to help pin the opponent down, relying on the combo alone, he could barely even land a hit. Right now the gap in strength was too great. All he could do was cling to the combo and desperately search for an opening. But soulless, empty motions were useless in the end. Catching his moment, Gu Sejun kicked him hard and sent him flying. He crashed into the crowd, drawing jeers and insults all around. Holding his forehead, Kang Ju-sung sighed and could only hope his brother would give up soon. Then they could find another chance to turn things around. Knees throbbing with pain where he'd hit the ground, Lee Min-soo knew that if this went on, he'd be beaten into the dirt again, just like last time. To protect himself, he began to think about surrendering. At that moment, someone shoved him back into the ring, and a group of seniors shouted at him, "You idiot, what are you spacing out for? Get back in there. If you give up now, we'll deal with you when we get back." Standing in the ring, hands in his pockets, Gu Sejun asked lazily, "What are you dazing out for? Looking for your mommy?" Hearing that, Lee Min-soo merely smiled. In an instant, a new plan formed in his mind. Gu Sejun frowned. "What are you laughing at?" "Nothing." He looked up at him. "I just suddenly thought of a way to beat the crap out of you." The two of them stepped back into the makeshift ring, and an excited cheer exploded around them. Gu Sejun yawned. "Recess is over." Rolling his shoulders, Lee Min-soo said flatly, "Yeah, time to put an end to this." He'd already figured out how to use the combo, but getting Gu Sejun into a corner was the hard part. Previously, Kang Ju-sung had told him that with his current strength, there was no way he could force Gu Sejun back into a corner by sheer pressure. The only way was to enrage Gu Sejun and make him charge in on his own. And Kang Ju-sung had even given him a guaranteed trigger point that would set him off. With a leering tone, Lee Min-soo called out, "Hey, what do you think of Gu Se-min's looks?" The instant the words left his mouth, Gu Se-jun exploded. He swung his fist, aiming straight at Lee Min-soo, who was standing close to the human wall. Everything unfolded just as they'd imagined. At the moment the fist came down, Lee Min-soo blocked it with his palm. While his opponent was startled, he grabbed a fistful of his hair. He yanked hard and twisted his body with it. The situation flipped on the spot. "Looks like your sister really is something special to you." At first, Gu Se-jun thought the other boy landing a hit was just a fluke. But when he tried to shift his body out of the way of the next punch, he realized his back was already pressed against the solid human wall. The guys behind him were shoving and crowding. He couldn't move freely at all and had nowhere to brace himself to strike back. He had no choice but to take the punches head-on. Every attempt to counterattack was blocked by the massive onlookers behind him. If he wanted to break free of the human wall, he would first have to endure a barrage of blows from Lee Min-soo. Only then did he realize he'd walked straight into a trap. Try to fight back, and the crowd behind him stopped him from moving. Try to escape the crowd, and he'd be pummeled by Lee Min-soo's fists. Now he'd become a lamb to the slaughter, and the only thing he could do was raise his arms to shield his head. He finally found an opening to counter, but Lee Min-soo smashed a side kick into his knee joint. What followed was the combo they'd practiced for 15 days straight, unleashed blow for blow like reading from a textbook. Lee Min-soo poured all the humiliation of that time onto Gu Se-jun. Even as he saw the other boy already on the verge of collapse, he knew he absolutely couldn't stop. He couldn't give him the slightest chance to breathe. Fists, knees, and feet hammered relentlessly into him from every angle. Gu Se-jun's consciousness began to blur. He knew that if his next punch didn't land, he'd have no hope of turning this around. But now, his attacks were moving at a snail's pace, and his strength was completely gone. "I warned you already, don't insult my mom. The more I think about it, the more I want to kill you." The kids who usually looked down on him were boiling over now. They were watching this weakling pull off a comeback right in front of their eyes. Eyes bloodshot, Lee Min-soo kept swinging and shouting, "If you don't know the situation, don't run your mouth about someone's mom. You hear me?" It wasn't until his final punch swung at empty air that he realized Gu Se-jun had already passed out cold. The jaws of the onlookers were about to hit the floor. The three seniors from his room felt a chill run down their spines, because this meant that from today on, Lee Min-soo would be the new boss of the room. Exhausted, Lee Min-soo was still seething. He couldn't understand why, even after being beaten this badly, the guy wouldn't apologize for that insult. Suddenly, the crowd parted on its own, opening a path. The director strolled over with a group of guards. "I honestly thought you couldn't win, but you did. Looks like this animal kingdom is pretty interesting. The mouse actually managed to beat the snake." Before he could figure out what that meant, the director bent down and murmured in his ear, "A mouse is still a mouse. Even in a fight, you're full of tricks." Lee Min-soo could only answer with the timid squeak of a mouse. By this time, Kong Ju-song had already slung the unconscious Gu Se-jun over his shoulder and asked the director, "How should we deal with him?" The director waved impatiently, "Throw him in solitary or wherever." Kong Ju-sung immediately complied. As he passed by Lee Min-soo, he muttered under his breath, "Why is this kid so disobedient? Who does he take after?" Lee Min-soo shot back with a grin, "Maybe I take after my brother." The plan had gone off track in unexpected ways, but in the end, it was completed without disaster. Next, they could move on to the second phase. One day later, in an art studio, Gu Se-min asked, "So my brother is in solitary confinement now?" Looking a bit apologetic, Kong Ju-sung said, "Yeah, the plan spun out of control. That wasn't part of the original arrangement." "Don't move." She cut him off. Right now she was using him as a life model, making him hold a weird and very uncomfortable pose. "How much longer can I last?" Kong Ju-sung couldn't help asking. "This pose is killing me." "Done. If I'm lucky, this piece will get me into art school at the top of the list." Kong Ju-sung glanced at it and almost exploded. "How is this supposed to be art? And it's a self-portrait of you?" After a few lines of banter, Gu Se-min suddenly reminded him, "Your brother might be in trouble. Because the ones he crossed are the kitchen crew. I used to be on the kitchen crew in the girls' block, so I know those people a bit. The boys' kitchen crew is very tight-knit. If you mess with even one of them, they'll take turns coming after you. Especially their boss, Jang Do-hwa. You need to be extra careful of him." At almost the same moment, at the serving counter, Jang Do-hwa was dumping side dishes into Lee Min-soo's tray. In just a few seconds, the broth had flooded the entire plate. Lee Min-soo frowned. "That's way too much." Jang Do-hwa sneered. "That's normal. You're the one who picked a fight with our kitchen crew." Faced with the kitchen boss's snide tone, Lee Min-soo decided to play dumb. Pointing at himself with an innocent look, he said, "You sure you've got the right guy?" Jang Do-hwa hesitated, then awkwardly asked, "You're not Lee Min-soo?" "That is my name," he said with a straight face, "but maybe you mean some other guy with the same name. It's a pretty common name, you know." Feeling he might have the wrong person, Jang Duba was about to send a lackey to double-check. But the lackey just pointed straight at Lee Min-soo and shouted, "It's him." No mistake. Seeing things about to go south, Lee Min-soo bolted on the spot. Good thing I'm quick on my feet, I almost got wrecked. Meanwhile, in the capital, a summit attended by several of South Korea's top leaders was underway. 3 representatives from different parties were sharing the stage with President Han Man-soo, and afterward they would need to present a joint statement to the public. Kong Ju-sung's stepfather was one of those 3 representatives. Clapping Assemblyman Kong on the shoulder, Han Man-soo smiled meaningfully. "Long time no see. Back in the election, we were rivals. But now, for the good of the country, you behave yourself as my subordinate and work hard." With that, he casually slapped him on the butt. Cameras flared wildly in the audience, capturing this historic moment. Assemblyman Kang's face froze with embarrassment. That smack had been delivered in front of the entire nation. Seething inside, he went backstage and slammed a punch into a sandbag with Han Man-soo's photo on it. After venting, he turned to his son. "You just watched your father swallow humiliation with your own eyes. What do you think?" Standing before him was Kong Ju-sung. "Bringing Han Man-soo down is easier than you think. All we have to do is destroy his most important political asset, the Youth Rehabilitation Center, that so-called reformatory. That's why I sent you in there," Assemblyman Kong said, eyes lighting up. "How's your progress?" "From everything I've seen so far, that place is nothing like what he describes to the public. They force kids to abuse each other and all kinds of mistreatment are routine. For fun, they even deliberately ignore the fights between kids. This talk of reforming youth is just a pretty excuse. In reality, it's a complete and utter hell." Hearing this, Assemblyman Kong applauded with a smile. "So the reformatory is Han Man-soo's weak spot?" "That's right. As long as we expose the truth to the media, it will be enough to pull him down." But his father shook his head. "You're too hasty. That alone isn't enough. At the end of the day, those kids are still criminals. The victims will just think they deserve to suffer. All Han Man-soo has to do is apologize, shout a few slogans about human rights reforms, make a few changes, and your little scoop will be washed clean. You need to dig out something truly fatal from the inside." Today, the punishment arranged for the juvenile offenders at the reformatory was something called the crab position. Each kid had to bend like a crab with his head pressed to his own butt. This was the director's entertainment for the day. Twisted up and shaking, Lee Min-soo cursed inwardly. "Damn it, how long do I have to hold this? I'm about to die here." Suddenly, a guard walked up to him. He tensed up reflexively, blurting out, "Crab, crab." Looking up, he finally let out a breath. It was Kong Ju-sung. "Out, private training." In an instant, Lee Min-soo perked up, thinking his brother was giving him extra coaching. Instead, what awaited him was an upgraded version of the crab drill. Balancing on his stomach as a pivot, all 4 limbs lifted off the ground, holding the pose in midair. A bit sheepish, Kong Ju-sung explained, "If I just pull you out outright, it'll make people unhappy and make the director suspicious." "You're just making my life harder," Lee Min-soo protested through clenched teeth. "Calling you out alone is so I can explain the second phase of the plan. This rehab center runs on a reward and penalty point system," Kong Ju-sung said slowly. "You get points for completing assigned tasks, you lose points for violations. Rack up 100, and you qualify for a parole review. On the flip side, the more points you lose, the further your review date gets pushed back. And right now, your score is -50. 2 stints in solitary, 1 big group fight. You've never earned a single reward point." Weakly, Lee Min-soo asked, "So how do I earn points?" Kong Ju-sung took out an application form. "The fastest way is to voluntarily apply to be an assistant on the kitchen crew." Lee Min-soo threw himself to the floor, rolling around. "Are you insane? I pissed off the kitchen crew that badly, and you want me to walk into their territory as an assistant? That's just asking to get chopped up. I'd rather rot in here than go there. Those guys will kill me." Kong Ju-sung sighed. "Fine. I'll come up with another way." After the high-intensity training, he was so exhausted he nearly passed out. But he'd barely closed his eyes when an annoying buzzing sound woke him. He slammed his hand on the desk. "Do you really have to make that noise with your mouths?" The noise was coming from the 3 seniors who had now been reduced to vacuum cleaners. The white-haired boy, thanks to him becoming boss, was finally freed from his role as Pobby. The seniors explained that humming while they worked made them more efficient, and told him to just sit and relax. They'd be done in no time. Resting his chin on his hand, Lee Min-soo thought it over. Earning points by cleaning classrooms was way too slow. 1 classroom for 1 point. How many years would it take to reach 100? Just then, 2 guards came in and asked how the cleaning was going. "Almost done, just about finished. Then you alone can head to the next place. Someone put in a request for extra volunteer work for you." Hearing that, Lee Min-soo lit up, assuming Kong Ju-sung had found him another path. He grinned and snapped off a salute. But when he reached the assigned spot, he froze. It was the kitchen crew. Weren't we clear you wouldn't dump me in the kitchen crew? He complained bitterly in his heart. Jang Dubois, a boy whose dream was to become one of Korea's top chefs. With his right hand he could handle a 3-kilo cast iron pan plus 2 kilos of ingredients in it, all single-handed. His left hand was for precise work. To him, criticizing his food as bad was the same as insulting his skills. When a few juvenile offenders grumbled it tasted awful, he fixed them with a cold glare. But he knew he couldn't do anything about it for now. After all, he was the only one here who actually knew how to cook. Everyone else either set the pots on fire and screamed, or held up a pot of burnt black liquid claiming they'd rendered oil. Or they somehow produced pure, cursed cuisine in a pan. Watching the ingredients go to waste, all he could do was tell them to stop, close to tears. He wanted to tear them apart, but they were his team, so he could only endure it. Today, though, things were different. Lee Min-soo had insulted his team. If this new guy turned out to be just as hopeless in the kitchen as the others, then Jang Dubois would have every excuse, under the name of culinary training, to settle all his past and present scores at once. With that in mind, he hefted a pan and charged at Lee Min-soo. But Lee Min-soo casually whipped up 2 dishes, and left the kitchen boss who'd been ready to kill him standing there in a daze. In all his years in the prison kitchen, this was the first time he'd seen someone whose cooking skills could stand shoulder to shoulder with his own. So after witnessing Lee Min-soo's technique, he didn't lay a hand on him again. Instead, overcome with excitement, he lifted him up on the spot, crying, "I've finally found you. I knew this day would come." From that day on, Lee Min-soo was not only the boss of Room A, but also the trusted right hand of kitchen boss Jang Dubois. However, not everyone in the kitchen crew was happy about it. Someone suggested pitting Jang Dubois and Lee Min-soo against each other, but judging from Jang Dubois' current attitude, that was practically impossible. The only idea they could come up with was to throw trash into the dishes Lee Min-soo made, ruining the taste. As long as the food turned bad, Jang Dubois would change his opinion of him, maybe even turn on him. The more they discussed it, the more pleased they became, and they were just about to act. The door clicked open. The instant they looked up, their pupils shrank. Standing in the doorway was guard Kong Juseon. Studying them with amused eyes, he said, "I've been wondering who's been making supplies mysteriously disappear. So it was you rats. Since you're thieving rats, you'll have to pay the price." The kitchen crew members weren't scared at all. Instead, they shouted back, furious, "What's your problem, guard? Don't you know this is the kitchen crew's turf?" But it wasn't long before all of them were sprawled on the floor. The group that had been gearing up to cause trouble for Lee Min-soo was taken down single-handedly. He still didn't know who had arranged for Lee Min-soo to be assigned to the kitchen crew, but from the looks of things, his brother was adapting pretty well there. In the director's office, 2 guards came in to make their report. Smiling with narrowed eyes, the director asked, "Did they fight?" When he heard they hadn't, his face instantly darkened. Arranging for Lee Min-soo to join the kitchen crew and having the kitchen crew move against him had all been his idea, yet he hadn't gotten to see the spectacle he'd been waiting for. The guards were long used to his temper. They had already prepared a lovingly made omeras to offer him, hoping to calm his rage. Elsewhere, Jang Dubois gathered all the kitchen crew members and said solemnly, "Are you ready for our special once-a-month day?" He took a bar of soap and grated it into fine shreds on a grater, then dumped them into a pot. Next he added double the amount of olive oil and set a double boiler over the heat. Then he sprinkled in finely ground basil powder, squeezed in a bit of orange juice to add vitamin E, and finally stirred vigorously. A pot of thick, highly glossy liquid was finished. Staring, Lee Min-soo asked, "You can actually eat that?" "It's not food, it's hair wax." Looking dead serious, Jang Dubois said, "Once a month the kitchen crew has a special day. We have to get our hair in shape for it." Bewildered, Lee Min-soo asked, "What kind of special day needs hair styling?" "On that day, new ingredients are delivered. We get to see the girls from the women's reformatory. Every month the cafeteria gets a supply shipment, and we have to split it with the girls' kitchen crew. It's the one thing in this job you could call a perk. On that day, we style our hair like adults, and we carry the goods on our strongest shoulders and work like mad." But when it came time to actually work, the treatment was completely different. The girls surrounded Lee Min-soo, calling him cute and tiny, and even offered to help him move things. Watching from a distance, Jang Dubois' eyes went red. His thoughts churned. This bastard doesn't even work, and he's flirting with the girls? Just as he was fuming, a short girl poked him in the back, slipped him a letter, and whispered, "Don't let our boss lady see this. Just take it, quick." He took the letter, his face flushing bright red. Seeing her make a shoo gesture as she left, his mind instantly staged a whole family drama of confession, marriage, and 5 kids. He'd even picked out their names. The happiness hit so suddenly that his eyes grew misty. Then he opened the letter and turned to stone on the spot. It wasn't for him, it was a love letter asking him to pass it on to roommate's leader, Lee Min-soo. Meanwhile, in the storeroom, Lee Min-soo was working himself half to death, panting hard. He couldn't figure out the kitchen crew at all. They'd all run off to help the girls move things, and no one would even touch the stack he was responsible for. Just as he was about to switch to another area, a shadow fell over his back. Jang Duba walked up, glaring at him. "Are you the leader of Rume?" Startled, Lee Min-soo answered on reflex. "Yeah, that's me. Do you know what day November 22nd is?" "Not really." A vein bulged on Jang Duba's forehead. "That's my wedding anniversary 3 years from now. And I'm guessing you don't know who Yeji is either?" Frightened by his tone, cold sweat broke out on Lee Min-soo's back. "Wait, what's going on?" "Yeji is my 5th child's name," roared Jang Duba. "If you hadn't betrayed me, she'd be here in this beautiful world with her little ponytail." With that, he swung his fist and charged. "You homewrecker who stole my wife, I'm going to kill you." Hands raised, Lee Min-soo hurriedly denied it. "I didn't do anything." Before he could finish, the punch was already in his face. He only just managed to dodge. That punch smashed straight through a metal card. If it had been his head, it would have exploded. He still had no idea what was happening, but it was clear the other guy was out for blood. He had no choice but to fight back, but his ankle was grabbed, and he was slammed heavily onto the floor. Jang Duba moved in to follow up, but his punch was blocked by the overturned metal card. Seizing the chance, Lee Min-soo lunged forward and threw a punch. Before he got close, though, another punch sent him flying in a straight line. The gap between them was obvious: longer arms, more power. He couldn't even get near. Every punch he took felt like being hit with a rock. Once he freed himself from the card, Jang Duba hammered punches into him one after another, shouting, "I'm taking So Young out on a date. I'm taking her hiking on Bukhansan." Very quickly, Lee Min-soo was driven back into a corner. But right then, a light bulb went off in his head and he came up with a way to drag things out. As the next heavy punch came in, he grabbed a nearby iron pot and used it as a shield. "I don't even know who So Young is, but your date plan sucks." He wrapped both arms around Jang Duba's waist, trying to repeat the move he'd used on Gu Se-jun. He wanted to trap him in the corner and turn the fight around with a continuous barrage. Nice in theory, but in reality he couldn't budge the guy an inch. Instead, Jang Duba caught him by the head with one hand and lifted him off the ground. "Lee Min-soo, you stole my pure love and my children's future. So accept the death penalty." At the last critical moment, Lee Min-soo grabbed a bag of flour and smashed it into his face. At the same time, over in the girls' kitchen crew, the girls were working and complaining. "This job is way too tiring. I never even wash dishes at home, and now I'm a cook." Someone doing inventory noticed an extra box of supplies on the list, obviously from the boys' reformatory side, and asked if they should send it back. The others immediately shook their heads. "If they need it, they'll come get it themselves." "I'm not going." Jang Duba looks terrifying. Someone else chimed in. "Yeah, I heard he once beat some guy named Chongsu so badly he got sent out of the reformatory." When no one was willing to go, a black-haired girl picked up the box. "I'll take it. Besides, I think Jang Duba is actually kind of cute." Meanwhile, the storeroom had turned into a full-on war zone. Using the terrain and his agility, Lee Min-soo kept circling and dodging, quickly exhausting what little strength Jang Duba had left. "Get out here. I'll make it quick and painless," Jang Duba shouted, panting hard. As soon as the words left his mouth, an egg splattered across his face. Holding a tray of eggs, Lee Min-soo hurled them one by one like darts. Covered in egg and utterly disheveled, Jang Duba's rage went through the roof. He grabbed a solid metal kettle and crushed it out of shape with his bare hand, then started throwing anything and everything around him in retaliation. "If you keep throwing stuff like that, someone's going to get killed," shouted Lee Min-soo as he dodged. But Jang Duba had completely lost his mind. Suddenly he grabbed a pan of scalding hot oil and flung it hard at Lee Min-soo. At that moment, the black-haired girl pushed the door open and stepped in with the box in her arms. The boiling oil was flying straight toward her face. For a split second, Jang Duba went blank. Before he could react, though, Lee Min-soo had already leapt over and wrapped her in his arms, using his own body to take the full blast of the splashing oil. After getting the news, Kong Ju-sung rushed straight to the infirmary. The moment he yanked back the curtain around the bed, he froze. There was a skeleton lying there. Of course, it was only a fake skeleton Lee Min-soo had set up as a prank. The real one was crouched beside the bed, shoulders shaking as he struggled not to laugh. Seeing how dark his brother's face had gone, he hurriedly wiped the grin off and put on a weak expression. "Good thing it wasn't boiling oil, or I really would have turned into a skeleton." Kong Ju-sung walked over and suddenly pulled him into his arms, gently ruffling his hair. "As long as you're okay." After they chatted for a while, Lee Min-soo said he wanted to go back to the kitchen crew. Kong Ju-sung refused on the spot. "You just got hurt and you still want to go back to the kitchen? You're the one who said that's the fastest way to earn points. And I know you'll teach me how to beat Jang Duba. As long as I win, all the trouble is over." Raking his fingers through his hair, Kong Ju-sung could only give in the end. After that, Using his authority as a guard, he applied to the director for a special form of corporal punishment. Punishment in name, but actually training for Lee Min-soo. He and Jang Dubu weren't even in the same weight class. To win, he had to build up his strength first. He started by pushing round stones with both feet, then moved on to pushing triangular iron wedges. And finally to the massive cube of stone in front of him. If he could make that boulder move even a fraction, he'd have a chance of beating Jang Dubu. Elsewhere, after a week in solitary, Gu Sejun still couldn't figure out why he'd lost. That guy couldn't even land a hit on me, and in the end he won. I must have gotten careless. If we fought again, I'd never lose. But the more pressing problem right now was wiping his butt. He was out of toilet paper, the water was shut off, and half a sleeve of his shirt was already torn off. He stared helplessly at the sleeve that remained. If he used it now, what would he wipe with next time? Just then, a wad of toilet paper was tossed into the isolation cell. Stop using random crap. Use toilet paper and wipe properly. From outside the door, Kang Jusung told him to hurry up. He was coming in. When the door opened, the cell was empty. The next second, Gu Sejun appeared behind him and asked coldly, "How do you know my sister?" Before he'd even finished the question, he swung a punch. Kang Jusung casually caught it, and with a smooth lock, pinned him to the floor in an instant. He'd always known the guy was strong, but hadn't expected him to be this ridiculously strong. He shut his eyes, ready to take a beating. But what came wasn't a fist, it was the glow of a phone screen. If you're that curious, ask her yourself. Meanwhile, to defeat Jang Dubu, Lee Min-soo had started his strength training with the giant stone. Even when he was shaking all over and utterly exhausted, he didn't dare stop for even a second. Because he knew very clearly, only when his strength was enough to make the boulder in front of him shift even a single millimeter would he have even the slightest chance of beating Jang Dubu. To the other seniors in Room A, he just looked crazy. There are plenty of tough guys in this prison, but Jang Dubu is the one everyone agrees is the strongest. If that explosive right hand ever lands on you, if it doesn't kill you, it'll cripple you. Look at Jo Chang-soo, right? One punch scrambled his brains, turned him into an idiot, and he ended up getting forced out of here early. In their eyes, challenging Jang Dubu would only lead to the same fate for Lee Min-soo. But right now, all Lee Min-soo did was throw himself at the stone over and over with all his strength. He understood that if he wanted to earn points, a fight with Jang Dubu was bound to happen sooner or later. There was no hiding from it. Once the call connected, Gu Sejun asked cautiously, "Sis, are you already out of the reformatory?" Gu Semin didn't answer him. Instead, she told Kang Jusung to cover his ears. Then, on the other end of the line, she unleashed a furious torrent of scolding at her brother, leaving him feeling utterly wretched. When his eardrums felt like they were about to explode, he finally couldn't take it anymore and hung up, his hand shaking. After a long silence, Kang Jusung lowered his hands. "What happened to you?" With a dead-inside expression, Gu Sejun said, "Nothing, just a little tired." Then he looked up again at Kang Jusung. "You're working with my sister, right? You're Lee Min-soo's brother, and you're also the one teaching him how to fight." "That's right. Got a problem with that?" "Good." Gu Sejun's tone suddenly turned serious. "I'll do what you say. Teach me how to fight too." Time jumps ahead 1 month. Ever since that fight with Lee Min-soo, Jang Dubu has been like a half-wit. Now he burns the food every day and we keep getting punished. At this rate we're all going to get kicked out of the kitchen crew. The door suddenly flew open with a kick. Lee Min-soo walked in. The moment he saw him, the veins on Jang Dubu's forehead bulged, and he snapped out of his lethargy in an instant. "Lee Min-soo, this is all your fault. I'm getting my revenge." But just as he was about to reach him, his steps suddenly slowed. Because Lee Min-soo asked, "Want to know why girls don't like you?" He blurted, "Why?" "Because you're ugly as hell." After a brief silence, the pressure in the storeroom seemed to collapse. The kitchen crew members went pale with fright. "Are you insane? You're still provoking him? We really are going to see blood today." Enraged, Jang Dubu once again chased him all over, smashing everything in sight. Mouth still spitting fire, Lee Min-soo ran in circles like last time, relentlessly draining his stamina. Soon, the brute who only knew how to rely on raw strength was gasping for breath. Realizing he couldn't go on like this, he stepped up onto a table and dove off, swinging his fist down. This time, with a light sidestep, Lee Min-soo let him punch through another cart, and the explosive right hand got jammed against a thick iron pillar. Right after that, he deliberately took a left punch, making the other men think he was still the same easy target. In the instant Jang Dubu relaxed, he clamped both hands tight around his left arm. "I actually used my brain before I swung, you dumb ox." As he spoke, he kicked off the floor and wrenched with one arm, forcing the joint of Jang Dubu's left arm up next to his own head. "You brainless idiot, get ready for your punishment." At the same time, the director was sitting in the cafeteria waiting for his meal. Dressed up as a waiter, Kang Jusung walked over with a tray. "Director, today is a special event day, and I've personally cooked for you." This is a dish made with Alaskan cod. The director's face lit up with delight. He had never expected to eat something so rare in a place like this. Right after, Kang Jusung mixed a special drink for him as well. The director had barely taken a sip when he felt as if he'd drunk top-shelf liquor. Of course, the real highlight still had to be the special showdown happening right in front of him. Right now, with his left arm locked by Lee Min-soo, Jang Duba was still talking tough. So you finally stopped running. But when he finally wrenched his right hand free from the gap in the cart and got ready to counterattack, he realized the truth. His left arm was tightly bound, and his right arm, because of his massive frame and the cramped angle, simply couldn't extend. In short, he was too big, and his own size was being used against him. Not bothering to talk, Lee Min-soo just smashed punches into his face one after another. Taking the blows, Jang Duba asked in confusion as he was hit, "Who taught you this grappling? And you really think that just doing this is enough to beat me?" He tried to break free with brute force, but found that Lee Min-soo's stance and weight distribution were unbelievably solid. He poured in strength to no effect and instead kept eating punches. A month earlier, Kang Jusung had already broken down the method and key points for his brother to defeat Jang Duba. In the previous fight with Gu Se-jun, the difference in their weight classes had only been one level. That had allowed Lee Min-soo to force him into a corner and decide the match with a combo. But his opponent now was Jang Duba, whose weight class was 3 full levels above his. Trying to use the same tactic was nearly impossible. More realistically, he had to pray he wouldn't be the one forced into a corner. Closing that kind of weight gap in a short time was pure fantasy. It was just like pushing stones. If you thought of those boulders as Jang Duba, how could you move or even topple them? The answer lay in leverage. In fact, human movement itself is a matter of using all kinds of levers. As long as Lee Min-soo turned himself into the crowbar, using angles and center of gravity as fulcrums, he could lever that boulder named Jang Duba. Right now, Jang Duba was burning with rage inside. No matter how he rammed forward, the skinny kid in front of him didn't budge. All he could do was passively take hit after hit. Watching from the window, Kang Jusung turned to the director. "Director, are you enjoying the show?" The director squinted and commented, "It's interesting enough, but the direction is too predictable. Look at Jang Duba's face, he's totally lost. How could those skinny little arms possibly beat that big lump of meat? Besides, Lee Min-soo's already getting tired. You can't fake the difference in weight." Kang Jusung suggested, "Care to make a bet? I'll bet that kid, Lee Min-soo, will win." The director's eyes lit up. "A bet sounds good. I love wagers that don't have any clear odds." But in Kang Jusung's view, claiming that weight difference alone could nullify headshots was nonsense to begin with. From the way basic boxing stances are designed, every movement is built around protecting the head and face. Because one of the most vulnerable parts of the human body is the face and skull, where many critical areas are concentrated. Among them, the jaw is especially important. A solid hit to the jaw sends shockwaves into the brain and inner ear, causing the opponent to temporarily lose their sense of balance. In amateur fights, weight classes are certainly important, but in the end, what really decides the outcome is skill. At this point, under the barrage of heavy punches, Jang Duba's vision was already swimming. In his days, he seemed to see So Young waving goodbye to him. With the final straight punch from Lee Min-soo, that dream wife and the shadows of his 5 imagined children all vanished. The kitchen crew stared at the fallen Jang Duba in utter shock. Even the director momentarily lost his composure and blurted out, "How did you know that brat would win?" "Just a hunch," Kang Jusung replied blandly. Not very pleased, the director got up to leave. "You've got an interesting hunch. You'd better start thinking now about what reward you want from that bet." Meanwhile, barely able to stay on his feet, Lee Min-soo was gulping for air. In his mind, he was thinking that it was finally over. Just then, he spotted a letter on the floor that had fallen from Jang Duba's pocket. When he opened it, he realized it was a love letter addressed to the leader of Room A, but the recipient wasn't him, it was Gu Se-jun. According to the kitchen crew, the reason Jang Duba had gone after him so viciously was that he'd thought the letter was written to Room A's leader, Lee Min-soo. The moment he understood, all he could do was smile bitterly. So all the physical hell I went through trying to take this guy down was because he got the recipient wrong? He was dying to rush over and land a few more punches, but the kitchen crew held him back firmly, leaving him fuming in place. At the same time, in a special restricted area of the reformatory, several special inmates were sitting around playing cards. They complained, annoyed, the selection for the next candidate has gone off the rails again. First Gu Se-jun, then Jang Duba. Is that kid Lee Min-soo really that strong? Jang Duba was supposed to be the strongest in the whole facility. Now that the 2 pre-selected candidates had both been disqualified, they had to move to the backup list. One was Lee Kong-min, a notorious Daehyundong mob boss and construction foreman. The other was a maintenance crew member, Ha Sung-cheol. As soon as the list was read, someone objected. "I can see why you'd pick Lee Kong-min, but why Ha Sung-cheol? He's not even a boss. At that point they noticed the blonde-haired Jisoo hadn't said a word and asked why he wasn't choosing. Lounging lazily, Jisoo replied, I wasn't going to get involved. But after listening to you, I'm a little interested. This time, I nominate Lee Min-soo as a candidate. And that blonde was currently the #1 figure in the reformatory's reform center, Im Jisoo. Elsewhere, after losing, Jang Dubwa had been thrown into solitary, and in the meantime, Lee Min-soo had taken over as acting leader of the kitchen crew. In the process, he truly came to understand Jang Dubwa's misery. The kitchen crew guys were nothing but kitchen wreckers. If they weren't making the rice explode, they were creating absurd food combinations. Or they were even putting an electric kettle on the stovetop and blasting it with high heat. All Lee Min-soo could do was roar at the top of his lungs, stop. All of you, knock it off. Not long after, it was time for the prison supply delivery again. Sarah, the black-haired girl he'd saved before, came looking for him on purpose. A bit embarrassed, she said, thanks for last time, for blocking that pan of oil for me. Scratching his head, Lee Min-soo said, the oil actually wasn't that hot. It was no big deal. Before he could finish, Sarah, face flaming red, shoved a letter at him. Traumatized by the last love letter incident, he instinctively asked, this isn't for Gu Se-jun, is it? Blushing even harder, Sarah spun around and bolted, shouting back over her shoulder, it's for you, idiot. Once she'd run far enough away, he hurriedly checked the addressee, and this time, it really was for Lee Min-soo. Right then, in his mind's eye, he was already watching a family of 4 strolling happily in the sunshine. A lifelong single, his face instantly turned as red as a ripe apple. In truth, Farah's feelings for him weren't just because he'd shielded her from the oil. She'd noticed him even earlier, on the day she went for a walk in the yard after eating and happened to see the duel between Lee Min-soo and Gu Se-jun. The courage and sense of responsibility that burst out of that frail-looking boy, and those eyes wild like a honey badger's, completely captivated her. From then on, she'd constantly worried about how he was doing. Today, with her big sisters helping her dress up and hyping her up, she finally mustered the courage to confess. She hoped that the next time they met, she would hear his answer. Back in the room, clutching the love letter, Lee Min-soo grinned like an idiot for a long time. When the seniors heard about it, they were all indignant. Traitor. We've been here way longer than you and not one of us has gotten a girlfriend. You're this happy just because you got a letter? Lee Min-soo didn't deny it. I really am happy. Up till now, the only letters I've ever gotten were from my mom. Or that love letter that was meant for Gu Se-jun but got sent to the wrong guy. As he spoke, he even invited everyone to gather around and read the letter with him. On the other side, Kong Ju-sung went to the warden's office. Sergeant Kong reporting. I heard you wanted to see me. The warden looked him up and down. You've been transferred here for about 3 months now, right? I hear you passed the Korean Army Academy early admission process at record speed and took first place in your class on the sergeant's exam. Someone like you actually willing to come work in a place like this reformatory. Well, I really ought to thank my own luck. With a respectful expression, Kong Ju-sung pledged his loyalty. I'll work even harder for you and for the country, Warden. He knew that only by earning the warden's trust would he have a chance to help his brother rack up more points. But then the warden shifted the topic. You know, I caught something interesting on the surveillance recently. You and that boy named Lee Min-soo seem a little too close. What exactly is your relationship? If he wanted to get his brother out of the reformatory, Kong Ju-sung had to hide their real connection. He was adopted. After all, on paper nothing tied them together. Hearing the question, he couldn't help suspecting that the warden had already noticed something. In any case, he absolutely couldn't let their relationship be exposed and had to come up with a plausible excuse. But the warden's next words actually made him relax. You're teacher and student, right? I saw you teaching him how to fight. That's why you dared bet with me, because you knew your student would win. I have to say, you're not only smart, you can fight pretty well too. Going with the flow, Kong Ju-sung explained, it was Lee Min-soo who said he wanted to get stronger and begged me again and again, so I reluctantly agreed to teach him. The warden warned him coldly, don't get too close to that trash. Kong Ju-sung quickly agreed and then left, using the excuse that he needed to prepare for an outdoor volunteer activity. Once he was gone, the warden picked up the phone. He had no intention of letting it go at that. As long as this kid was that unusual, it was worth digging into his background. In the isolation cell, Gu Se-jun finally let out a breath of relief. From the sound of his sister's voice on the phone that day, she must have gotten out of the reformatory. In another isolation cell, however, Jang Dubwa was curled up, trembling all over, eyes brimming with tears. He was still hung up on that love letter with the wrong addressee, feeling it was all far too unfair and entirely Lee Min-soo's fault. Just then, the cell door opened. Kong Ju-sung stepped in and said calmly, what happened to you isn't Min-soo's fault. Choking back tears, Jang Dubwa shot back, what do you know? He stole my wife and kids. My life is ruined. But in that letter, when she wrote Room A boss, she didn't mean him. She meant Gu Se-jun. The instant the words landed, Jang Duba's expression flipped. He yelled, "Lee Min-soo, I'm sorry. I blamed you for nothing. Gu Se-jun, you bastard, you're dead." Unable to help himself, Kang Ju-seon cut in. "Calm down. You're jumping to conclusions." As he spoke, he took out his phone and pulled up a photo. When Jang Duba saw the image clearly, he gnashed his teeth. That's the kitchen goddess, Gu Se-min. Why is she standing next to that piece of trash Se-jun, posing like they're a couple? Once more, he swore to carve Gu Se-jun up into 1,000 pieces. Now he's stealing my goddess too? After hearing that they were siblings, his expression grew complicated. So that means Gu Se-jun is my little brother-in-law? From the other isolation cell, where he'd already heard the commotion, Gu Se-jun immediately roared back, "You pig, who's your brother-in-law?" So the two of them started a shouting match from opposite ends of the narrow corridor. One side yelled that he needed to think about his future nieces and nephews. The other spewed curses with a sky-high B-word count. Watching them scream at each other with such enthusiasm, Kang Ju-seon finally let out a breath. That's that wrapped up. From here on out, all Min-soo has to do is keep racking up points. Aside from that, there was something else he had to keep digging into, the dark secret the Warden was going to great lengths to hide. And that special restricted zone he couldn't enter was likely the key. Just as expected, before he'd thought about it for more than a few seconds, he saw several guards carrying a juvenile offender out of the restricted area. What bothered him even more was the man inside wearing a red prison uniform. Meanwhile, in the showers, Lee Min-soo was staring at a sliver of soap worn down to nothing. This is even smaller than last time. How am I supposed to wash with this? Someone passed him a bottle of shampoo from the side. They actually have this stuff in prison? He took it and turned his head. How do you have shampoo? And your prison uniform is red, and you don't have a rank tag on your chest. So Yar? Jisoo calmly introduced himself, speaking slowly, but he called out Lee Min-soo's name in one breath. That made Lee Min-soo pause. How do you know me? Before he could figure it out, Jisoo suddenly bent down. Thinking he was about to be attacked, Lee tensed up instinctively. In the next instant, that hand simply ruffled his hair lightly. You're even smaller than I imagined. How did you win those 2 fights? Lee Min-soo said stiffly, since you lent me shampoo, I'll let this slide. But then Jisoo suddenly dropped a strange line. This time I came looking for you. Next time, it'll be your turn to look for me. It won't be easy, but I'll wait. With that, he wandered off without a care, leaving behind a thoroughly confused Lee Min-soo. Back in the isolation cells, the two brawlers finally stopped their shouting. Jang Duba asked, "You could have beaten Lee Min-soo. Why did you let him win?" Gu Se-jun shot back, "And what exactly did you do to lose to him?" He explained that he'd been careless that day, and the kid had been very well prepared. Jang Duba admitted, "At first I just wanted to toy with him a little, and then realized I'd walked straight into the trap he'd set. But after those 2 fights, they must have noticed Lee Min-soo by now." Jang Duba nodded. "Yeah, they even got people in the kitchen to stir things up between me and Min-soo. Maybe they're planning to hand the candidate spot to Lee Min-soo instead of me." At that, Gu Se-jun suddenly snorted. "Don't make me laugh. I'll prove I'm the real candidate. I'll climb to the top and pay them back 100-fold for the humiliation they gave me." 15 days later, Lee Min-soo had gradually blended in with the kitchen crew. Just as he was about to dig into his noodles, the kitchen crew members all stared past him with strange expressions. Puzzled, he realized that Jang Duba had silently taken up position behind him. Hands raised high as if he were about to attack from behind, and the next second, he suddenly dropped to his knees. "I'm sorry, Lee Min-soo. I got the wrong guy and tormented you all that time. And now that bastard is my brother-in-law, so I can't even help you get revenge." Reaching out a hand, Lee Min-soo pulled him up. "It's fine, I accept your apology. Come on, sit and have some ramen." Moved to tears on the spot by this gesture, Jang Duba started crying in earnest. The rest of the kitchen crew joined in, shouting, "It's all in the past." Then someone else blurted out, "And now Lee Min-soo's gotten another love letter from a girl." At that, the emotion vanished from Jang Duba's face in an instant, twisting into a snarl. "You bastard, Lee Min-soo, now you've got your eye on my second wife too?" Right there in the storeroom, they put on another wild chase scene, but this time it was just for fun. Grinning from ear to ear, Lee Min-soo was thinking that tomorrow was the day he would write back to Sarah. But the next day, he couldn't smile at all. He'd been assigned to join a volunteer job. Rolling on the floor, he protested, "I don't want to do any stupid volunteer work. I want to see Sarah and give her letter back to her." The seniors tried to calm him down. "But this is the only way right now to get a big pile of points." Just then, another crew of volunteer kids walked in. With mocking smirks, they taunted, "You guys want to be my underlings? I can hook you up with cushy work at fried chicken joints and stuff." Everyone from Room A snapped back in unison. "What the hell are you talking about?" One of the fat kids grabbed Lee Min-soo by the collar. "So you the one who beat Gu Se-jun and Jang Duba?" Look at you, you're weak as hell. Just as it looked like things were about to explode, a guard rushed in to stop them. The moment they saw the guard, everyone lined up in 2 neat rows, playing the obedient student. The shifty-eyed boss on the other side was the first to speak up and tattle. "Guard, we've been behaving ourselves. They're the ones who stirred things up." Bald Senior Wang Hyuk was about to argue, when a heavy punch crashed into his face. The guard said coldly, "I've had a problem with your face for a while. With a face like that, of course you're going to cause trouble." Stunned, Lee Min-soo immediately realized. This guard was clearly on the other group's side. All Wang Hyuk could do was beg for mercy. Thankfully, Kong Jusong arrived in time and stopped the guard from hitting him again. "That's enough. We're about to head out." Seeing it was a colleague, the guard smiled and said, "The kids were about to start a fight, and I lost my temper for a second, hit a bit too hard." Then he took his team and boarded the bus first. Concerned, Kong Jusong asked Wang Hyuk, "Can you still manage to go do the volunteer work?" Wang Hyuk shook his head, then nodded. "Yeah." Then, looking at his brother's back, Kong Jusong said sharply, "You were about to attack a guard just now, weren't you?" Glancing back with an innocent smile, Lee Min-soo said, "How could you think that?" Once they were on the bus, he asked Moon Hyun-jun, "Do you smell something weird?" When he turned, he saw someone in the back row had stuck his reeking bare feet into his space. He immediately warned, "Get your feet out of here." Their boss said lazily, "If you don't like it, fight my guys. Even if Gu Se-jun showed up, he couldn't handle us." Before he could finish, Gu Se-jun stepped onto the bus. Without saying a word, he simply stood there and swept his gaze over them. The loudmouth boss's pupils blew wide, and his lackey scrambled to pull their feet back. Even Lee Min-soo hadn't expected that today would be the day Gu Se-jun was released from solitary. He cursed inwardly, "Great. This volunteer trip is going to be nothing but troublemakers, one after another." Very soon, the bus arrived at the nursing home. The director, together with several aunties, greeted them at the entrance. Kong Dusung went up politely and shook hands. "We hope this volunteer activity can bring some positive changes to the kids from the reformatory." Another guard held up a camera, saying he would record the whole process. The aunties brought out drinks to treat these juvenile offenders. After just one sip, they couldn't help exclaiming, "It's been so long since we had cola. This is the taste of freedom." Today, the volunteer work they had to do was taking care of the elderly in the nursing home. Looking at a room full of white-haired seniors, they grumbled as they worked. Just then, a senior inmate suddenly pointed ahead. "Wait, isn't that a young woman over there?" Following the voice, when Gu Se-jun saw who it was, he crushed the paper cup in his hand on the spot. It was his older sister, Gu Se-min. "What the hell? Why is my sister here?" Their first assigned task was to wash the senior's feet, with the nearby guard in charge of photographing the entire process for the record. After finishing washing one elderly grandpa's feet, Lee Min-soo wiped his forehead and let out a breath. He heard someone beside him call for the next person, asking him to help. He assumed it was another elderly person and agreed without thinking. "Joking," he said. "This grandpa must have been through a lot. His feet have a ton of calluses too." He was just about to look up and ask, "Feeling a bit better now?" when he froze. That was no grandpa at all, but the boss of Room C, Oh Tae-sung. Oh Tae-sung plopped his wet foot right onto Lee's face. "Dry it. How about you just follow me from now on and be my professional foot wiper?" The humiliation made Lee Min-soo's fury shoot straight to the top. He nearly exploded on the spot, but Moon Hyun-jun clung to him with all his strength. "Hold it in, the guard's filming over there." Oh Tae-sung and his underlings kept up their sneering from the side. "This kid's just a hot-headed punk. Looks like Gu Se-jun and Jang Dubois aren't that great either." Grinding his teeth, Lee Min-soo could only force his anger down. He knew the guard over there was on Oh Tae-sung's side. If he made a move now, they'd just play him even worse. Out in the yard, Gu Se-min was pushing an old grandma in a wheelchair for a stroll. "Grandma, the flowers over there are so pretty, let's rest here for a bit." The real reason she chose to stop here was that she saw her brother also slowly pushing an old man this way. "Everyone else is busy helping out, and you're slacking?" she teased. Keeping a straight face, Gu Se-jun said he sincerely wanted to spend more time with the seniors. "After all, you got thrown into the reformatory for beating up that perverted old man." She didn't hide anything. "Yeah, we did the wrong thing back then. We should have reported him for sexual harassment, but instead we handled it in the dumbest way. And besides, not all elderly people are like that." Leaning back in her chair, she gazed up at the sky. "Someday, we'll grow old too. What kind of people do you think we'll become then?" Gu Se-jun frowned. "What are you really trying to say?" She pushed the wheelchair away, leaving him just one line. "When you're old, what kind of person do you want to be? Think about it, Se-jun." Lunchtime arrived. Each boy carried a tray to feed the seniors. Just after helping a grandma with a few bites, Lee Min-soo heard someone nearby start to cry. He looked up. Oh Tae-sung was sitting across from an old grandma, stuffing his own face and even using the food to toy with her. "What is he doing?" Unable to hold back, Lee shouted to stop him. The words had barely left his mouth when a splash of soup came pouring down over his head. Oh Taesung's lackeys laughed smugly. Oops, our bad, it was an accident. He was about to charge over, but Moon Hyun-jun and Wang Hyuk grabbed him and held tight. A nearby guard immediately walked over. Lee Min-soo, trying to stir up trouble again? They're the ones who dumped soup on my head. He didn't even finish before being cut off. They said it was an accident. The guard, of course, was on Oh Taesung's side. Swallowing his frustration, Lee could only hold it in again. Oh Taesung's underlings grew even more brazen. We used to be afraid of a block people, but they're nothing special after all. Leisurely, Oh Taesung began to explain his creed. I don't care what block you're from. In my eyes, money is king. In the reformatory, ranks are based on the severity of your crime. But in the end, the more serious the crime, the tougher you usually are. But we're in C block as fraudsters. We might not be the best at fighting, but we don't need to fight at all. Just look at the news. Yukseon Group Chairman Moon Hazik, released on bail due to deteriorating health. If you have money, bodyguards, cops, even the law itself will protect you. We don't have power, so we'll just buy power. Fraudsters are the last people who will ever be short on money. In his eyes, as long as you held onto the cash, you could control the A-block thugs who lived off their fists. His lackeys, fired up by his words, became even more unrestrained. Soon, they were assigned to bait the seniors. But instead of working, Oh Taesung's boys just smoked and fooled around in the bathroom. They ignored the old man shivering under the scalding water. Just then, Wang Hyuk, who had just finished cleaning the toilets, headed to the bathroom to tidy up. The moment he pushed the door open, he saw the whole scene. He dropped his mop on the spot and stepped in front of the elderly man. I thought it was security for a second, the lackeys jeered. Scared me there. You've gone too far. Wang Hyuk couldn't help but shout. What if Grandpa has a heart attack? Before the words even finished, a punch came out of nowhere and smashed into his face. The fat one sneered. Who do you think you are, talking down to me? The other two lackeys laughed and cheered from the side. Gritting his teeth under the blows, Wang Hyuk fought back. Come on, then, you bastards. By the time Lee Min-soo and Moon Hyun-jun arrived, Wang Hyuk had already been beaten unconscious on the floor. Back outside, Lee went to find Kang Jusung, hoping his brother could help and give them a chance for payback. But Kang Jusung shook his head. You're out here doing volunteer work and still thinking about fighting? If you cause trouble here, things will only get more complicated. At a loss for words, Lee could only turn and walk away. Just then, a voice called out to them from behind. Guard Officer Shin walked over, half smiling. If I didn't mishear, you just now seemed to call him brother? Their expressions tightened instantly. They were just about to explain when Officer Shin continued. I've thought it was strange for a while. Sergeant Kong treats you like family. What exactly is your relationship? Kang Jusung knew that once their identities were exposed, every plan would collapse. For a moment, he was at a loss for words. At the critical moment, Gu Se-jun suddenly appeared beside them and shouted at Kang Jusung. Bro, I've been looking everywhere for you. Those guys are causing trouble again. Officer Shin froze for a second. This punk actually dares talk to a guard like that? Kang Jusung quickly followed his lead and explained. Maybe I'm too lenient with them, so they all just call me bro. Officer Shin gave a cold warning. This place is turning into a gang academy. I'll pretend I didn't see anything this time. If I see you getting too close to this trash again, I'll report it straight up. When he was far enough away, Kang Jusung finally let himself relax for real. But they all knew that if things kept going like this, it was only a matter of time before they were exposed. Lightly tapping Gu Se-jun on the chest, Lee Min-soo wordlessly thanked him. Gu Se-jun casually tapped him back, still spitting venom. Don't get the wrong idea. I'm not helping you. As they talked, the two nearly started arguing again. So Kang Jusung simply grabbed them each by the neck like chicks. Both of you, behave. Still unwilling, Lee asked, you really aren't going to help? Those guys are way out of line. Kang Jusung jabbed a finger at his forehead. You almost exposed yourself just now, and now you want to stir up trouble again? You trying to rot in here forever? With that, he directly assigned Gu Se-jun to keep an eye on Lee Min-soo. Naturally, Gu Se-jun wasn't happy, but when he heard the threat that refusing meant double training, he could only nod helplessly. After that, under the Andy's guidance, they were assigned to change diapers for bedridden seniors. Running back and forth, Lee Min-soo had just finished changing several people and was about to move to the next. He suddenly realized that the pack of diapers that had been full just a moment ago was gone. He turned around and saw that Oh Taesung and his lackeys had put all the diapers on themselves. They were fully geared up and striking ridiculous poses. Get ready to go to war with that useless punk from a block. Just as Lee was about to step forward, Gu Se-jun blocked him. Don't fight. Your bro told you to behave. But I really can't swallow this kind of provocation. Off to the side, Oh Taesung was still basking in his own glory. We're not playing around. We're protecting the world. And we've already captured a monster. The monster they were talking about was Wang Hyuk, who was tied to a chair. His body was wrapped in tape, and a diaper was pulled over his head, leaving only his nose exposed. Seeing this, Lee's anger instantly went off the charts. "You're doing this to someone who just got injured?" From the side, Gu Sejun lightly patted the back of his head. "Calm down. Don't stop me, or we'll fight first." "Fight? I'm fine with that. But look who's over there." He pointed to the side. Oh Tae-sung was reporting to Guard Officer Shin that Lee and the others had been provoking them non-stop. With a stern face, Officer Shin walked toward them. "Didn't I warn you not to cause trouble? One more incident and you're going back for special training." To avoid dragging his brother down, Lee Min-soo could only swallow his rage yet again. In the afternoon, Oh Tae-sung's lackeys went outside to smoke. The fat one grumbled, "How long do we have to keep being that guy's underlings? Every time he starts spouting off, I just want to go up and deck him." Their leader, Park Tae-ho, waved his hand. "Relax. We're only cozying up to the C block guys for now so we can live more comfortably. When the chance comes, we'll climb higher." His real target was that area only true powerhouses could enter, the place where the men in red prison uniforms were. Rumor had it they were picking the next candidate, and there was already a hot favorite here. Someone cut in from the side. "But didn't Gu Sejun already lose to Lee Min-soo?" Park Tae-ho snorted. "That's probably just a rumor. One look at Lee Min-soo and you can tell he's a weakling." He'd already decided to seriously injure Gu Sejun and prove his strength to the men in red. On Lee Min-soo's side, he had also figured it out. For now he had to endure. Even if it was to settle internal room problems, he couldn't drag his brother into it. Just as he was thinking about how to get around them, the two boys coming straight at him deliberately tripped him. They pointed at him on the ground and burst into loud laughter. "You bastards, I'm killing you today." Just as he was about to explode, someone else stepped in to smother the fire. Gu Se-min walked over with a handkerchief. "Good thing you seem okay. You can take a beating just like your brother. You don't even cry at this level." Curious, he asked why she knew his brother. She wiped his face as she smiled. "That's a secret." But with one sidelong glance, Lee had already spotted the name tag on her chest. Before leaving, she added, "Please, take good care of my little brother for me." Only after she walked away did he slowly turn her name over in his mind. Gu Sejun, Gu Se-min. Thinking back to everything so far, he could be almost certain. This woman was Gu Sejun's sister. A thought formed rapidly in his mind. He sprinted all the way back to the classroom and smacked Gu Sejun on the back of the head. "That's payback for you hitting the back of my head before. Want to settle this one-on-one?" With his head lowered, Gu Sejun said flatly, "Don't even think about it." But he did admit, right now he really wanted to beat up those C-block punks. At the same time, on the rooftop, Gu Se-min was waiting for Kong Ju-sung. A bottle of soda was suddenly set lightly on top of her head. "Sorry to keep you waiting." "This is more than enough for me," she said, satisfied. Kong Ju-sung asked what she'd called him up for. She replied, "Thanks to you, I got to see Sejun. As family, I have to show my gratitude. These days, you've also been helping me non-stop." Kong Ju-sung admitted, "I only did it because it benefits me." "You really are capable, you keep making me want to punch you." Trading jabs back and forth, the mood between them relaxed a lot. Then Kong Ju-sung asked, "Have you heard of the red prison uniforms?" From her reaction, it was obvious she hadn't. The other guards either dodged the question or clam up completely. Digging up any useful intel is even harder than I expected. He checked the time. "I have to get back. Who knows what kind of trouble my brother will stir up next." "Don't worry," Gu Se-min said. "I've already asked Sejun specifically to keep an eye on Min-soo. I saw with my own eyes how he held back when someone picked a fight. That kid is pretty impressive." Kong Ju-sung chuckled. "Of course, he takes after me. Even when he's being disobedient, he knows what he's supposed to do, and he does it well." Not to be outdone, Gu Se-min said, "I'm not losing this one. I had Sejun watch Min-soo because Sejun is reliable. My brother is dependable and manly, after all." Going back and forth like that, they took turns bragging about how great their little brothers were. Neither of them knew that, at that very moment, their two perfect, younger brothers were downstairs, fighting with blood boiling. Catching wind of the commotion, Oh Tae-sung and his crew rushed over to watch. Puzzled, Lee Min-soo asked, "They bully our rooms guys and play cruel jokes on the elderly, and you're really not angry at all?" Coldly, Gu Se-jun replied, "What's that got to do with me? Quit talking and fight." But Lee kept going. "That's not necessarily true. I'm guessing their next target will be the volunteer Nuna, Gu Se-min. Isn't she your sister? Just thinking about what kind of pranks they'll pull on her has me worried already." This was the new plan he'd come up with after meeting Gu Se-min. Since the two still hadn't started fighting, Oh Tae-sung's lackeys started booing from the sidelines. "What's wrong? All talk?" One of them stuck his face right up to Gu Se-jun. "Don't tell me you're scared of Lee Min-soo." The words had barely left his mouth before his head took a heavy hit. He's not completely wrong. Oh Tae-sung's lackeys roared in anger. "You dare sucker punch one of us? My sister is indeed pretty, but I wasn't worried about her at all. But the more I think about it now, the madder I get. I'm going to make you pay for messing with people from our room. Meanwhile, in the storage room, Guard Officer Shin was humbly lighting a cigarette for Oh Tae-sung. To get him into this volunteer activity, Shin had gone so far as to forge documents to get the C Block VIP on the bus. Oh Tae-sung said calmly, "I'm very satisfied. I'll make sure you get a bigger cut this time." With money in hand, Officer Shin beamed obsequiously. "I should be thanking you. You always give me pocket money." Oh Tae-sung went on sketching his blueprint. "Once I take over a block and bring in a construction crew, you'll get even more. Find a way to connect me to the people in that special cell. I'm going to meet them personally soon." At that, Officer Shin panicked. "That place is under the Warden's direct control. If we get involved and someone finds out, we're finished." Right then, a lackey burst through the door. "Something's happened. Gu Sejun is beating up our guys." Furious, Officer Shin snapped, "Didn't I already say no fighting?" But Oh Tae-sung stopped him. "Don't rush in yet. I've been wanting to teach those losers a lesson anyway." "Right, Park Tae-ho?" Led by the lackey, a whole group headed toward the battleground. All of this was seen by Gu Se-min, who was hiding around a corner. Elsewhere, Lee Min-soo was hyped up, cheering for the fight on sight. Since Kong Ju-sung had told Gu Se-jun to keep an eye on him, he decided to use that to his advantage. He would use Gu Se-jun to help him take care of his enemies. Bruised and battered, the 3 C-block punks realized they had to work together. Just imagining his sister getting dragged into their pranks made Gu Se-jun hit harder and harder. This time, the 3 of them coordinated. One attacked head-on. One drew aggro. The heavy hitter, the fat one, stood up front to maximize damage. Seeing things had progressed far enough, Lee Min-soo finally chose to jump in. "I wasn't planning to throw any punches, but since you all so sincerely invited me." "I never said anything," Gu Se-jun shot back coldly. Before long, they had actually forced Gu Se-jun back against a wall, and the fat one's fist came crashing in. But tricks like that no longer worked on him now. Training under Kong Ju-sung really did make him stronger. Watching, Lee thought to himself, "But I'm the same. I'm not going to be that soft pushover anyone can squeeze anymore. Stay out of my way. Just don't drag me down." "That's it? You almost lost to these clowns?" "I didn't lose, you mama's boy. You creep of a siscon, and you're calling me names? You want to fight me or what?" Without even noticing, they had already beaten all their opponents to the ground. Yet they themselves kept bickering, on the verge of starting another fight between the two of them. Just then, Park Tae-ho suddenly appeared and sent Lee Min-soo flying with one kick. "I heard you used to be a candidate?" He stared at Gu Se-jun. "Fight me. One-on-one. Who the hell do you think you are?" Taking a kick, Park Tae-ho acted like it didn't hurt at all. He even smiled. "You try it too, see if you can handle one." On the other side, Lee struggled to push himself up. As soon as he lifted his head, he saw Oh Tae-sung walking toward him. "Boss of Room A, I've got a final offer for you. Hand over your entire block to me. Once I put on a red prison uniform, I won't treat you badly." Red prison uniform? That guy who lent me shampoo? The thought flickered in his mind, but he still refused. "Get lost. You dare bully the seniors here and the people from our room. There's no way I'm looking the other way." A black bag suddenly dropped over his head. Before he could react, a kick slammed into his face. Looking down from above, Oh Tae-sung drawled, "Listen carefully, while I'm still willing to talk this out. I want to take control of a block so I can find a powerful helper, someone like Gu Se-jun. Of course, in my eyes, Park Tae-ho is even stronger than him. Even though Park Tae-ho's present rank was only D-class, his raw strength was already at an A-class level. Facing him, Gu Se-jun could clearly feel it. Their attack power was on par, but when it came to taking hits, the other guy was miles ahead. Deliberately blocking punches with his body, Park Tae-ho waited for chances to counter. If this dragged on, the one who'd lose would definitely be Gu Se-jun. He recalled what Kong Ju-sung had told him. "Your fighting technique and reach are better than Lee Min-soo's. But that's your only advantage. If reach is your strong point, then seal it away. If you run into someone who has reach, power, and endurance all at once, how will you fight? I'll give you a fighting style that's yours alone, a path that'll completely transform you. Lie down." "You and I aren't on the same level," Park Tae-ho said coolly. "I'll show you what a real difference in level looks like," Gu Se-jun gritted out. They clashed again. Excited, Park Tae-ho shouted, "Yes, that's it. Use your full power. Only then does beating you mean anything. But is blocking all you've got? That's way too boring." Gu Se-jun knew he couldn't just turtle up. Kong Ju-sung's warnings echoed in his head again and again. "If you only focus on defending, your movements will slow. The moment your hands drop, your guard will break. While you're blocking, you have to read his habits and punching angles, not just think about how to hit back." In that instant, his eyes finally began to catch his opponent's movements clearly. Park Tae-ho's shoulder rose very high. That had to be a heavy punch. The longer he observed, the clearer the movements became. His rhythm, his speed, the timing of his retraction. All of it started to become predictable. The opening was right in front of him. That all you've got? Taking a punch, Park Tae-ho kept mocking him. In the next second, the situation flipped completely. Every punch Park Tae-ho threw, Gu Sejun slipped with ease. Every counter he threw landed solidly on Park Tae-ho. If Park Tae-ho kept flailing like this, he'd burn out fast. Just like in that fight when Gu himself got dropped by Lee Min-soo. Now he finally knew why he'd lost to Lee, and understood just how terrifying Kang Ju-sung really was. With nothing but observation, he'd made someone like Gu into this strong. Soon, Park Tae-ho was on the floor. But there wasn't much excitement on Gu's face. A guy like this had already pushed him this hard. If he wanted to catch up to Jisoo, he still had a long road ahead. He looked around, puzzled. Where's Lee Min-soo? Following his line of sight, he saw Oh Tae-sung palming someone with a black bag over his head. We're this far in and you still won't surrender? Punching again and again, he growled. It hurts, doesn't it, you bastard? Inside the bag, all Lee felt was exasperation. The guy's punches were ridiculously light. He just couldn't figure out how a man's fist could be this weak. He'd gone through something similar before. It felt like getting hit over and over with an inflatable bat. He didn't know if it was all the training, or the experience from those 2 previous fights. Oh Tae-sung was still gloating. If it hurts, cry. Call your mom. Or is it that you don't even have a mom? That line hit his reverse scale. You crossed the line, you bastard. With one kick, Lee Min-soo made Oh Tae-sung experience what real pain felt like. At that moment, a familiar voice rang out. What do you think you're doing? Officer Shin pointed at Lee Min-soo in fury. Didn't I warn you not to fight? I didn't start it. They injured Gu Sejun first, I was just helping. That's still fighting. He turned his head and asked Gu Sejun, tell me clearly, what stunt did he pull this time? We didn't throw the first punch, Gu Sejun answered seriously. They went after my sister and harassed the grandparents here. Kang Ju-sung's expression instantly turned cold. See that? Officer Shin seized the chance. I told you not to get close to these people. Because you shield them, they're this arrogant. Get ready to write up a disciplinary report. Just then, Gu Sejun arrived. Officer Shin, what you should be preparing isn't a disciplinary report, but court documents. Who are you? Officer Shin stared wide-eyed. Unhurried, she took out her phone and opened an audio and video file. On it was the entire process of Oh Tae-sung bribing him in the storage room and having him forge documents. In an instant, Officer Shen's face turned pale. You took bribes and forged official documents. Her tone was calm, but every word struck home. Officer Shin suddenly lunged, trying to snatch her phone. Kang Ju-sung stepped forward, and with a single move pinned him to the ground. The two of them met each other's eyes and nodded in tacit understanding. This round had finally been turned around. After that, Kang Ju-sung dialed the command center. As soon as the call connected, Officer Shin shouted in panic, it's not just me. The guards in charge of the red prison uniforms take even more bribes. Hearing the words, red prison uniforms, Kang Ju-sung's heart jolted. But to the questions coming from the other end of the line, he simply said, I'm just calling to report our return schedule. After he hung up, Officer Shin was so grateful he was almost in tears. Sergeant Kang, I'll never forget this favor. Kang Ju-sung looked at him coldly. This time, I'll look the other way. On one condition, tell me everything you know about the red prison uniforms. The red prison uniforms were the most special group of inmates in the reformatory. All of them were personally selected by the warden, tasked with handling trouble that even the guards had difficulty dealing with. In exchange, they enjoyed privileges inside the prison that others wouldn't even dare dream of. Their mission was simple yet brutal: to prevent a certain type of inmate from being smoothly released back into society. Isn't this place supposed to rehabilitate juvenile offenders? Kang Ju-sung found it hard to accept. Officer Shin explained coldly, there are always some people who are considered beyond saving. Sending them back into society unchanged would cause political scandal. Put simply, the job of the red uniform inmates is to make sure people like that don't walk out so easily. Then doesn't that make the point system and rehabilitation reviews a joke? You're still too naive. Officer Shin shot back. Have you ever actually seen anyone leave this reformatory properly? That's what the red prison uniforms are for. They specifically cripple those kids whose points are almost full and who are just about to get out. To put it bluntly, walking out of here easily? Not happening. A week after returning from the volunteer activity, Lee Min-soo was only 50 points away from the total needed to apply for release. The prison guards were still violent as ever, and the fights between kids never stopped. Maybe because he and Sejun had given them such a harsh beating, the boys from C-Room no longer came looking for trouble with them. At this point, there was only one thing really weighing on him. Before the next supply day, he had to give Sarah an answer about that love letter. That day, he was supposed to come clean the storage room with Kang Ju-sung. But when he arrived, he found the storage room was already spotless. Gu Sejun was off to the side, putting in extra training reps. Isn't this place already cleaned? Why'd you bring me here? Lee Min-soo asked, confused. Before he finished speaking, Kang Gyu-sung had already snapped handcuffs onto his wrists. Stand there and don't move. He picked up a tennis ball from a nearby box full of them. He'd come up with a training method. From now on, both your hands are restrained. I'm going to keep throwing tennis balls at you. Your only job is to dodge. And each tennis ball would be faster than the last. He barely managed to avoid the first one. The second ball sped up instantly and smacked his scalp numb. This was exactly what he lacked most. An instinctive reaction to sudden changes and crises. What instinct? I already beat Gu Sejun and Jang Dubois. Doesn't that mean I don't need more training? You call that a fair and square win? Kang Ju-sung shot back. The way you three fight is way too one-dimensional. You just happen to exploit their weak spots. If Gu Sejun had been prepared in advance, there's no way you'd have won. And if you hadn't trained your leg strength, how would you have managed to kick Jang Dubois at all? Now, Gu Sejun was also learning basic combat under Kang Ju-sung. He wanted his little brother to get systematic training too. Even though I hate fighting, this place is just too dangerous. Ever since Officer Shin had told him the truth about the red prison uniforms, Kang Ju-sung knew that if he wanted his brother to safely leave this hell, he had to become stronger. Meanwhile, Lee Kang-min, the leader of the construction team, was in secret talks with C2 Block's boss, Oh Tae-sung. Oh Tae-sung believed, this reformatory is no different from the outside world. As long as you have money, you can buy juvenile delinquents and bribe the guards. If we throw enough cash at it, we can band together and fight that special group, the Red Prison Uniforms. He offered a tempting condition. If Lee Kang-min agreed to join, he'd give him 20% of the profits, about 4,000 won net each month. He even promised he could help pull strings for a red uniform slot. But Lee Kang-min's answer left Oh Tae-sung momentarily stunned. No matter how perfect a plan looks, working under a weakling will only ruin my reputation. Oh Tae-sung snapped his fingers. Then I'll give you a little more time to think. Why do you think I asked to meet you alone, with no guards or lackeys around? With a crisp snap, and Cheol-do from C2, Jang Sang-hyen from D3, Park Tae-ho from D1, and So Sung-jian from C6 stepped out from the shadows, surrounding Lee Kang-min. Well? Oh Tae-sung asked with a grin. Feel like changing your mind now? Taking off his glasses, Lee Kang-min said slowly, not bad. Using money to buy muscle isn't a bad idea. But you really think 4 people are enough? By this time, Lee Min-soo had gradually adapted to the tennis ball training. His dodges had become clean and sharp, with no wasted movement at all. And he'd never learned any of this systematically before. On that alone, his talent could already be called top tier. Seeing that the first phase of training had reached its ceiling, Kang Ju-sung decisively switched to phase 2. This time, the tennis balls were no longer simple straight-line attacks. He began controlling the angle and where they landed, bouncing them off the floor to hit again. At the same time, he increased the throwing rate. Now, Lee not only had to dodge balls from the front, he also had to stay wary of shots rebounding in from his blind spot behind him. Attacks aimed at blind spots like that weren't something even pros could necessarily handle. His goal in the second phase was to stack a huge amount of experience in handling multi-angle attacks for his brother, and build instinctive dodging reactions. I get all that, but why do you have to tie up my hands? Your hands can be used for offense or defense, Kang Ju-sung explained. They only come into play when you really can't dodge or block any other way. On the other side, in the same warehouse, Gu Se-jun was drenched in sweat. In a short time he had shown progress far beyond expectations, but the road ahead was still long. Every time Kang Ju-sung showed up, it was only to point the way. What truly made them stronger, from beginning to end, was never anyone else, but their own determination. The training he'd arranged this time would be hellishly brutal. If they got through it, their potential would be fully unleashed. If they couldn't, they'd be stuck at the word potential forever. And silently, he wondered to himself, once this hell training ended, which of them would end up going farther? Meanwhile, Officer Shin quietly opened the door to the private meeting room. What was supposed to be the surround and crush setup planned by Oh Tae-sung had already turned into a slaughterhouse. The 4 bosses of each block had all been taken out. Only Oh Tae-sung remained, begging the just-arrived Officer Shin for help. But he didn't know that Officer Shin and Lee Kang-min had long since been grasshoppers tied to the same rope. From the start, this meeting had been a trap they'd set together, with only one goal: to squeeze the safe combination for Oh Tae-sung's external stash out of him. Using the location provided by Officer Shin, Lee Kang-min's people had already seized that hideout. Inside was roughly 200 million won in cash. According to their prior agreement, Officer Shin could take 10% of that. It'll be in your account by the end of today, Lee Kang-min said. On one condition, you pass on a message to the special organization and tell them I want to meet. The next day, when Lee Min-soo went to the kitchen as usual, he was stopped. You can't work here anymore. Scratching his head, Jang Dubois looked embarrassed. Standing beside him, Officer Shin added, "There are too many people in the kitchen crew now. We have to cut some. The construction team just happens to have an opening. Want to give it a try? It'll suit you." Looking at the form, Lee hesitated. Switching places without talking to my brother? What if this messes up our original plan? But under Officer Shin's urging, and since this was the only way to rack up points quickly for now, he ultimately nodded and agreed. Watching the back of the boy he liked walking away, Jang Dubois silently prayed. He hoped he'd be safe and sound. He had a vague feeling that getting dropped from the kitchen crew and transferred to construction was all part of someone's prearranged plan. Before long, Lee Min-soo arrived at the construction site where the team was based. Seeing the place full of big, burly men, he froze. These guys are really high schoolers like me? I just hope the foreman here isn't another Jang Dubois. At that moment, Foreman Lee Kongmin walked over to him. Looking gentle and scholarly, he even reminded his boys, "Don't make faces like that, you'll scare off the friend who came to help." Considerately, he handed him a pair of gloves. "I'm Lee Kongmin, the construction team leader. If you work barehanded here, you'll get hurt." He ordered his men, "It's Lee Min-soo's first time around machines. Help him out and let him get used to things." Then he smiled at Lee. "If you ever have questions, just come find me." Lee instantly felt a huge weight lift from his chest. Looks like transferring to construction was the right move. This leader is gentle, polite, actually looks out for me. Nothing like that rough Jang Dubois. What he didn't know was that from an angle he couldn't see, Lee Kongmin was watching him like a starving wolf. Not long after, a red uniform inmate left the restricted area. As she walked, she complained to a guard, "How do these kids live in a place like this? This whole reformatory smells like lonely old men." The guard reminded her, "You only have 5 minutes. In and out, quickly." Pushing open the door, the red uniform inmate stepped into the construction team's warehouse. Everyone froze for a moment. The person in the red prison uniform was actually a woman. Member of the special organization, Red Uniform, Park Hyoshin. The boys couldn't believe it. Why is there a woman here? But she does kind of look like a guy. Everyone heads down, hands over your ears, Lee Kongmin ordered coldly. They obeyed at once. Is this like a cutesy version of a gang? Park Hyoshin's lips curled. As long as I don't give the order, they can't see or hear anything, Lee Kongmin replied coolly. You're Lee Kongmin? She gave him a once-over. You look exactly like my type. You're not Kim Wire-young. Lee Kongmin frowned. Kim Wire-young has other business, she said with a teasing smile. What? Disappointed it isn't him. Adjusting his glasses, Lee said, not disappointed. Let's say a new face showed up, that's all. Under his direct gaze, she theatrically covered her face. If you stare at me like that, I'll get shy. But in his head, he was already calculating. She looks fragile, but she's wearing a red uniform. Interesting. What are you doing in this dump? She held up 3 fingers. The number of candidates is back to 3. Still 3? He blinked. I clearly confirmed that Jang Dubois and Gu Se-jun were eliminated. She slowly counted them off. First, you, Lee Kongmin. Second, Ha Sung-cheol from maintenance. Third, the boss of a room, Lee Min-soo. Jisoo suddenly nominated him for the candidate list. At that name, a flash of disbelief went through Lee Kongmin's eyes. I've already proven my strength. Why am I still just a candidate? You haven't proven anything, Park Hyoshin laughed. If anything's been done, hasn't it all been thanks to your brother, Lee Kong-won? Even if a rabbit has a tiger behind it, the rabbit is still just a rabbit. His head snapped up. How do you even know my brother? Leaning in close to his ear, she whispered, Little rabbit, can you prove how strong you are without a tiger behind you? He took off his glasses. Then I'll beat you right now. Would that count as proof? To her, that kind of straight-on challenge was so childish it hurt. Looks like you're still nowhere near ready. Her tone suddenly went cold, and the aura around her changed in an instant. Do I really look that weak to you? The sudden pressure made Lee Kongmin shiver despite himself. He realized clearly that the person in front of him was definitely not weaker than he was. Don't overthink it, Park Hyoshin went back to sounding casual. You're still a very competitive candidate. That's exactly why I wanted to meet you. As long as you beat one of the other 2, Kim Wire-young and I will both help push this through for you. Only when the door closed did his taut nerves slowly relax. Was I really that tense just now? But the key point was that now he only needed to take down one of the 2. And one of them just happened to be in his construction team. He glanced over at Lee Min-soo working on the other side. With that thin frame, he hardly looked like someone who could have beaten Jang Dubois and Gu Se-jun. Let's test him first. He tipped his chin, giving his boys a look. In high spirits, busy with his work, Lee suddenly saw a hammer flying straight at his face. He reflexively jerked his head aside and barely dodged it. Sorry, I didn't mean it, the boy apologized at once. Shifting to another spot, he then got tripped by a cable, pitching forward, right toward a board covered in a dense forest of nails. He stopped just a centimeter short of having a nail go through his eye. Sorry, pure accident, another kid said, hand raised. With two coincidences in a row, even the dullest person would sense something was wrong. Was that really an accident, or on purpose? If it's on purpose, what are they trying to do? Before he could think it through, several boys had already closed in. They pinned him in front of a table saw and forced his hand toward the high-speed spinning blade. At that moment, the saw teeth were only micrometers from his palm. Someone yanked the main switch, and the whole warehouse went dark. When the lights came back on, the boys from a moment ago were all on the ground, out of commission. It wasn't me, Lee said with an innocent face. But seeing the crowd slowly gathering, he understood too. This had been aimed at him from the very beginning. And Cheol-du and Jang Sang-hyen advanced on him step by step. He couldn't decide for the moment. Should he fight back? If he did, there was a good chance he'd lose points. But just standing there and taking the hits wouldn't solve anything either. After thinking it over, he decided on the safest move. Yell for help and draw the guards' attention. Two guards in the distance did hear the commotion. They glanced at each other, then turned their eyes away and kept chatting as if they'd seen nothing. A chill went through his heart. So the guards are on their side too. And Cheol-du and Jang Sang-hyen had already rushed up to him. Meanwhile, at the other end of the warehouse, Gu Se-jun was still doing extra training. That's about enough. Time to head back and tidy the warehouse. If we're any later, there'll be trouble, Kang Ju-sung warned him. One more round, Gu Se-jun gritted out. This time I'll clear the first stage for sure. That punk Lee Min-soo is already on level 2. I'm not losing to him. At that very moment, under a 2-on-1 assault, Lee Min-soo was slipping through their attacks like a fish in water. He'd already mastered the rhythm of dodging, yet still held back from striking. He didn't want trouble. He'd come to the construction team for only one reason: to earn points and then leave quietly. Watching from the side, Lee Kong-min quickly saw what was going on. This kid's not fighting back because he's afraid of losing points, is he? Wanting to see his true ability, he simply had the guards leave on some pretext. Leave this to me. You two step out for a bit. Lee stopped holding himself back. He'd been bottling up his anger for a while, and this was the perfect chance to test the results of his training. To his own surprise, the two of them were weak to a ridiculous degree. He couldn't tell if he'd gotten too strong, or if they were just that bad. Before long, and Cheol-du and Jang Sang-hyen were on the floor. Looks like beating Gu Se-jun and Jang Dubo wasn't just luck, Lee Kong-min finally concluded. So this whole mess was your setup? Lee asked. What did I even do to deserve this? It's simple. Pushing up his glasses, Lee Kong-min said, you and I are both candidates. Candidates? It was the first time he'd ever heard the word. He'd only come here to honestly rack up points. Taking off his glasses, Lee Kong-min rubbed his brow in irritation. And because of some kid who doesn't even know what a candidate is, I'm the one who has to prove his strength. I was going to leave it to my underlings. But then some clueless nobody like you gets put up for comparison with me. That's what really pisses me off. So I changed my mind. From here on, I'm taking care of you myself. If you want to fight, just say so. What's the point of going in circles? Spreading his hands, Lee raised both middle fingers. Come on then, you bastard. The war between two candidates exploded in an instant. Only when they actually crossed fists did he realize. His opponent's speed was on a completely different level from those two earlier. Just barely dodging was hard enough. His attacks tracked him like a predator locked onto prey. They closed in step by step, leaving no room to breathe. This guy's trained in some kind of boxing? Lee judged inwardly. But he knew he couldn't dodge forever. Sooner or later he had to land a clean counter. Yet his first punch was easily caught one-handed by Lee Kong-min. You seriously have no idea how to attack, do you? Is this how you fought before too? Then I guess Gu Se-jun and Jang Dubu weren't much either. From then on, the exchange was almost completely one-sided. Though Lee desperately dodged, he could never find an opening. At last, he spotted what looked like a clear weakness. But the moment he went to strike, a heavy elbow smashed into his forehead. With real experts, their openings were often just bait. In the next dozen moves, he found another gap at his opponent's chest. Just as he moved to rush in, he took a side kick straight to the face. Using his raised guard as a foothold, Lee Kong-min stepped up, his whole body lifting off the ground. He drove a knee directly toward Lee's face. This is it, was the only thought that flashed through his mind. Then a hand appeared in front of him, firmly blocking the incoming knee. Arriving at the last possible second, Kang Ju-sung grabbed and held Lee Kong-min's leg. That's enough, his voice was icy. If you keep going, I'll throw both of you into solitary. A jolt ran through Lee Kong-min. He hadn't noticed at all when the man had entered. And judging by the uniform, he wasn't even a construction team guard. Any objections? Kang Ju-sung's gaze was like a blade. And where were the other guards? Did they deliberately clear the place so you could have a brawl? The two guards hurriedly changed their tune. We stepped out for a smoke and didn't see anything. Then Kang Ju-sung took Lee Min-soo and walked out of the warehouse. Left behind, Lee Kong-min cursed inwardly. Damn it, I was that close. Next time, you won't be so lucky. In the infirmary, Kong Jusung gave his brother a quick checkup. "You're not chewing me out?" Lee asked, surprised. "I got into a fight like this and all. I don't know the whole story yet." Kong Jusung asked, "Why did you end up in the construction team?" "They said the kitchen had to cut people. The only way left to earn points was construction. But if there was one thing Kong knew, it was that he'd never ordered staff cuts in the kitchen." Thinking it over, he suddenly remembered there'd been a similar accident when Lee was first assigned to the kitchen too. "Someone's got their eye on you," he'd already concluded in his heart. "It was the same as when I fought Gu Se-jun," Lee said with a bitter smile. "I couldn't land a single punch, and I couldn't avoid all his attacks either. That's normal. Lee Kongmin has very likely trained in kickboxing or something similar. He's nothing like Gu Se-jun. A guy like that can't be taken down with tricks or schemes. You only beat him by getting stronger for real." So he decided to start his brother on phase 3 of training. And during that time, he'd stay near the construction team and keep watch. He still didn't know who was pulling strings behind the scenes, but he knew there were only two things he could do now: make his brother strong enough, and wait for the right moment to confront whoever was in the dark head-on. With Kong Jusung now constantly around, Lee Kongmin never found a chance to move. Even after he had someone steal Kong Jusung's personnel file, he couldn't find a single weakness in it. Just one day. "I only need him gone for one day." Taking a phone out of his drawer, he dialed a number and spoke softly. "Do me a favor, and don't let my brother find out." 1 week later, at night, under the streetlights, Kong Jusung sat in his car, checking the time. He was waiting for someone. Before long, a familiar figure appeared in his headlights. Brushing back her hair, Gu Se-min looked a bit apologetic. "Sorry, I'm late." "It's fine," he said with a smile. "I figured you would be. That's why I left 30 minutes late on purpose." Them walking side by side down the street was captured in full by a hidden camera. By tailing them, Lee Kongmin's men had finally found Sergeant Kane's weak point. After saying their goodbyes, as Gu Se-min walked away, a black sedan quietly pulled in behind her and followed all the way to an alley. The doors opened, and several of Lee Kongmin's boys stepped out. "Thanks for walking into the alley alone like this." Frowning at them, Gu Se-min asked, "Stalking me was bad enough, but bringing this many people, what are you trying to pull?" One of the boys spoke up. "Gu Se-min, you're coming with us." Shrugging, she indicated she was fine with that. "Sure, but put out your cigarette first. I'm trying to quit." Meanwhile, in the warden's office, the warden asked Officer Shin, "Anything new with Kong Jusung lately?" Officer Shin replied, "He seems a bit overly fixated on Lee Min-soo. Ever since I transferred Lee to the construction team, he hasn't looked right. He often shows up at the construction area on the dot. It looks like he's deliberately protecting Lee." The warden asked again, "Anything else?" After thinking for a moment, Officer Shin said, "He's also been asking me specifically about the special unit." The warden nodded. "The first reason I moved Lee Min-soo to the kitchen was to test Kong Jusung's reaction. That's why I had you go do volunteer work with him. Later, when I moved Lee to the construction team, yes, it was partly at the request of the special unit, but at the root of it, it was because Kong Jusung was too suspicious. In the entire facility, he's the only one barred from accessing the military network. Everything we know about him comes solely from those few documents. So I already commissioned an external agency to run a background check on him. The results will be out soon. Until then, you have only one task: keep watching him." Curious, Officer Shin asked, "I get monitoring Kong Jusung, but why are you and the special unit also so interested in Lee Min-soo?" The warden said blandly, "Because he looks very much like someone." Right then, in the bathroom, Lee Min-soo was washing up, completely unaware that a far bigger trap was quietly closing in on him. 2 full weeks had passed since his fight with Lee Kongmin. He'd been training all this time, but he still didn't feel certain of victory. Because he knew people like Lee Kongmin were monsters you could only defeat with pure, raw strength. And to do that, he at least had to get through phase 3 of training. Just then, Whitehair heard someone call him and casually tossed a bar of soap over. His hand slipped, and the soap flew straight toward the unsuspecting back of Wang Hyuk. But just before it hit, it was as if some danger sense triggered in Lee. He immediately reached out and intercepted it. Then he frowned and warned, "Throw it properly. Quit dropping the soap all the time." Whitehair froze, utterly stunned. He had no idea how Lee, with his back turned, had known in advance. On top of that, Lee's body looked clearly stronger now than before. After washing up, Gu Se-min came over and asked, "Why didn't Officer Kong come today?" Lee answered, "I asked another guard. They said he suddenly took leave and told us to go organize the storage room for now." Just then, Ha Sung-cheol came looking for Lee, saying he wanted to talk alone. Lee blinked. "Isn't he also in construction? So he's probably the one who killed the power and saved me last time." Sighing, Ha said, "You still don't get how terrifying Lee Kongmin is." Then, right in front of Lee, he took off his pants. At first, Lee reflexively stepped back, having no idea what he was trying to do. But when he saw the horrific scar on the man's thigh, he began to realize something was wrong. Slowly, Ha Sung-cheol spoke. I used to be Lee Kong-min's friend, and his underling. He was the gang boss controlling the Daehan-dong area. I used to work under him. But the one time I defied him, I ended up like this. Staring at Lee, he said, if Lee Kong-min were only good at fighting, I wouldn't even bother stopping you. He's truly cruel. Anyone who dares cross him gets punished far worse than some normal beating. So I want you to stop going to the construction team. There's a good chance he'll cripple you and then have you sent out of the reformatory. After a moment's silence, Lee replied, as long as the officer isn't there, I won't go. With his repeated assurances, Ha finally, reluctantly, half believed him. But in spite of what he said, Lee knew very well. If he wanted to carry out his and his brother's plan, he would have to fight again when the time came. At the same time, elsewhere, Lee Kong-min was on the phone, checking in with his boys. He ordered, once you've brought her to the hideout, contact Kong Ju-sung immediately. All you need to do is make sure he can't make it back to the reformatory today. One of the boys asked, and after that, what do we do with the girl? Lee answered carelessly, do whatever you want. At that, the boys got excited. So we get to party again tonight. Tied up in the back seat, Gu Se-min's face clearly darkened when she heard that. This was completely different from what she'd expected. From that phone call alone, she could tell these men worked for someone in the reformatory named Lee Kong-min. And the only reason they'd grabbed her was to buy time by keeping Kong Ju-sung occupied. In reality, they'd already noticed someone tailing them since the day before. At the time, Kong had said, their target is either you or me. They could be the hidden dark force inside the reformatory, the real culprits who framed Lee Min-soo, or have something to do with the red uniform inmates. Gu had already staled herself to act as bait, but what worried Kong more was that she might actually be the target. Even so, she'd only shoved her motorcycle keys into his hand. If they're after me, you'll come save me in time, right? Now, a motorcycle was glued to the black sedan's taillights, refusing to let it go. At the same time, inside the reformatory, Ha Sung-cheol also approached Lee Kong-min. He got straight to the point. Stop going after Lee Min-soo. I don't know why you've singled him out, but he really is just a kid trying to earn points. Expression calm, Lee said, and why should I listen to you? Gritting his teeth, Ha said, because I'm in the construction team too, but I'm not the underling you used to boss around. This time I'm asking you as your childhood friend. Back in elementary school, the two of them had been best friends. But after they graduated, Lee started taking over his brother's business, while Ha went to school and took care of his sick mother. As their lives drifted in completely different directions, they lost contact entirely. In high school, Ha got a license and began doing food deliveries. The owner of one restaurant, after hearing about his family situation, kindly lent him a motorcycle. With that bike, Ha could both deliver food and pay for his mother's medical bills. One day, he got an order sending him to an abandoned factory. That place was a gang hangout, and part of Lee Kong-min's turf. That was how they reunited in that gloomy factory. Lee asked him, want to make money the easy way? It's simple. Put a few cockroaches in the orders, then spam bad reviews under their listing. When they can't do business anymore and want the reviews deleted, they'll have to cough up the cash. Naive and inexperienced, Hao got pulled into the scheme. He earned the first decent money of his life and even felt secretly relieved. If I keep this up a bit longer, I'll have enough for mom's hospital bills. But before long, the restaurant owner they'd blackmailed suddenly died. Only then did Ha learn that the kind uncle who'd lent him that motorcycle was their victim. He realized he was the one who'd personally driven that uncle to his death. Crushed by guilt, he finally decided to confront Lee. He wanted them to turn themselves in together. But as soon as he said it, Lee grabbed him by the throat. If I wanted to turn myself in, I never would have gotten into this in the first place. I gave you a way to make money and now you're telling me to go confess? You know what I hate most? Traitors. With that, he picked up a sharp metal pen and drove it hard into Ha's thigh. Say crap like that again and I'll kill you. At that moment, the real mastermind, Lee Kong-won, arrived at the factory. He was the actual boss of the operation. He told his little brother, the game's up. The police will be here soon. You could have covered this before, but now there are too many victims, and someone's dead. Looking at Ha on the floor, Lee Kong-min said, perfect. We'll pin it all on him. But Kong-won shook his head. This isn't something we fix by throwing away one underling. So he decided that underage Lee Kong-min would also share responsibility. After that, the two of them were sent to the reformatory together. That was the last time we really talked, Ha said. Today is the first time we faced each other properly since. Scratching his head, Lee replied, looks like you came about Lee Min-soo, but I actually had something similar in mind. I was going to ask you out to talk about him myself. After all, I've blocked Kong Ju-sung, but I have no direct way to contact Lee. Frowning, Ha asked, what are you getting at? The next second, he was slammed down onto the desk by Lee's boys. You know why I took on this pain-in-the-neck job as construction foreman? Because in the construction team, if someone gets hurt or crippled, nobody asks questions. And what I'm doing today is cutting off one of your fingers as a congratulatory gift for Lee Minsu. Meanwhile, Lee's boys had also reached the hideout, and just as instructed, they sent a message to Kong Jusung, ordering him to come here alone before midnight. What they didn't know was that Kong Jusung had already arrived.